Nice. Okay.
Okay, now you should be able to hear us.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Let me know if you can hear us. Dang it! We're gonna have to back all the way up.
Ah, that's okay. We refined what we were gonna say anyway.
Let us know if you can hear us. I didn't check. The program does this weird thing where when you like come back in, even though everything's still all plugged in and still all set up, you have to go and like
reset everything. Yeah.
Connect everything or it doesn't work.
Oof. Big oof.
Oh yay.
Okay, well, if we're starting over.
We're starting over. Okay. We're playing with the location generator AI. Okay, yeah, now they can hear us.
Awesome.
This is one of the uses that I could see using as a writer to get a more visual picture of and use that to generate ideas for scenes and for, especially if you're doing like action adventure like I want to do. It's like deeply connected to the physical world, and so you kind of have to have a better picture of, you can't just say it's in a living room, you know, it's like you have to understand.
Yeah. So if we're starting over, I'll just describe again what this program you're seeing. It's a image generation artificial intelligence, but model that's built for making wraparound environments, and you can click around with your mouse and navigate them. This would actually probably be really cool in VR. But yeah, so we're writing a prompt for a story that Annie has sort of outlined, I guess, or kind of like scraped together, that we're going to kind of be using as a lot of 4 elements for today to talk about. And the main thing is all of these 4 cousins from that all got together for like a family gathering of some sort, are sucked into another dimension and another reality where they have to make their way out of this maze. So our prompt is maze with puzzles and monsters, nature and light, metaphorical alternate reality. And we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's see. I'm probably going to need to sit here for... Oh, wow, it's actually going pretty quick.
It's pretty fast. And it might be very, like, very sketchy. I don't know. Or, not sketchy, but, like, a very, I don't know. Sometimes I would say the lower tier AIs, not, whoa. Wow. The lower tier AIs sometimes tend to be a little, like, blobby and undefined. But that's actually pretty cool.
Look at that.
And it has another world inside of it. Wow.
Interesting. Wow. Alright. The main thing that I'm feeling with this is that it's very open.
Okay. So you want it to be more...
like, feel like you're trapped, closed.
Right. So we need an adjective, or no, what is that? A verb that describes...
Adjectives describe things.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm really bad with that. Yeah, we need an adjective for, like...
you could just say closed, or...
Yeah.
You think in it. What were you going to say?
Like overpowering, or like menacing, or no.
Well, we could... I did want to...
Yeah, we could try and close.
This is good for pieces of the maze, because like they're going to be different sections as they go through and solve puzzles and.
Yeah. Did you want to save this one?
Oh yeah, how do you do that?
I just hit the download button. I'm guessing. I don't actually know how that works. Oh, cool. It saved it as a JPEG.
Cool.
That probably what you're.
Just what I'm looking at right here.
It could be what you're just looking at. So.
I might.
Just frame it up how something you like, just in case, and do it again. I actually hadn't tested that part of it, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, but you were saying menacing.
It's probably taking the light. That's why it's like glowy, all like that.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
It's cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, menacing. That's a good one. Yeah, sometimes the image generation, wow, that's totally different. Image generation, like they pick up on one keyword, and so part of like the like skill, I guess, is like changing one word at a time and seeing what effect that has on it. Like mysterious might be doing strange things.
Okay, well, let's go with mysterious maze with puzzles, enclosed walls.
Do you want like dungeon?
Ooh, dungeon. Can't spell.
Max is saying it looks like a game map.
Box and
that previous one. This looks like a Ghibli film, this one right here.
Yeah, it does look like a Ghibli film.
Which, it might be because we have the digital painting set up, so it's going to look like concept art. Because if you chose, you know, sci-fi or realistic or something.
What if we put more, like, I feel like the last one was kind of more Asian-inspired.
Right.
Like, what, I'm thinking something a little bit more Grecian, actually.
Greece. Okay. Like Greek gods, sort of.
More just the architecture of the...
Okay, yeah, pantheon.
You think of pillars and swoops and...
There's a word for it, I'm sure.
And structure.
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. I think this is going to be a theme of the stream, waiting for it to load. But this one's actually really quick compared to some that I've used. And for getting a whole 360 image.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Dungeon, definitely.
We're still getting, like... Oh, it could be kind of cool, though, in the story, as they're going through the maze, they can look out the windows and, like, see all the stuff, but they can't get to it.
Oh, yeah.
Does it, have memory?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, I feel like it's still incorporating the nature.
Oh, I don't think so. This one shouldn't. It should start from scratch.
It's still, like... Maybe instead of maze, we should say labyrinth.
Yeah.
How do you spell labyrinth?
Something like that.
Something like that. Let's see what it does.
So yeah, your idea of like them being trapped inside and looking out. I'm trying to think of like prompt words that would help with that. Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't really view this as like trying to get a picture of what I've already imagined or like trying to get a specific. It's like this is to prompt a lot of ideas as the writer, as the story.
Right. Like you would have never had that idea if you. Yeah. Oh wow. There's still a lot of greenery. And those wooden doors. It's cool.
I could see a section of the maze working like this.
Yeah. It's like different hallways.
That up there?
I don't know.
What if we did menacing labyrinth puzzle doors?
Sometimes with if you're just looking for ideas, like you don't have a specific image in your head, like the fewer words you put in there, the more the AI has to, not the more it has to play with, but the kind of the crazier, the more random it is to a certain extent. So if it's random that you're looking for, sometimes just like, yeah, menacing labyrinth could be like, you know, but we're probably going to get those wide open spaces since that's, I think, what it's trained on.
It's a Y. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a Y in labyrinth.
It's the wide open spaces.
Yeah, I think that's what it's trained on. But it's doing actually pretty good with these enclosed spaces, so I don't know.
Darkness!
Yeah.
No parents! Okay, sorry.
Darkness.
Oh, I should take a picture of that one. Oh well.
Quick screenshot. Nice.
Sloppy.
Yeah, because that's the thing with all of these image generators is that, oh, whoa, that's interesting.
Ooh.
The thing with the image generators is that they seem to be really good at generating exactly what you're not thinking.
Ooh.
Like, if you have a specific image in your head, it's actually really hard to make.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you have no image in your head, it's really hard to narrow down. So you have to be in this, like, sort of sweet spot of understanding kind of what you want.
Yeah. This is kind of cool.
It is. I like the, like, Victorian sort of, like, you're trapped in here, but it's nice? Question mark?
I want that. That's pretty cool.
You could probably take a look at one of those images and see what it actually is. Oh, yeah, no, it's the whole 360.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Cool. All right, well, I want to try...
A generational family home, like their estate, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, dilapidated.
Did I spell that right?
I don't know. Dilapidated is a hard word.
I don't think that's it. I think it's dilapidated. Oh gosh, I'm gonna question this now.
Dilapidated.
Dilapidated. Close.
Yeah.
No, I did get it right.
Oh wow, cool.
All right, let's just see what it does with that.
Oh.
Haha, you have to pay though.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't test how many you could do. I only did a few.
It's 5.
Oh, it's 5. Okay, cool. Well, anyway.
So.
That's pretty fun.
That's probably gonna be the end of the.
Of the skybox thing. Yeah.
But that'd be really cool if you're like in. Is it like a subscription-based thing? Probably.
Most of them are. There's a few free ones, but they always usually have a limit to them. Like there's one I've been using called Leonardo that has, like, you get 150 credits a day.
Interesting.
And so you can't go any more than that per day.
Yeah.
But when you and things cost, you know, certain things cost more credits than other things, like the higher the resolution of the image and all this stuff, because they all have to, what they're doing is they have to pay for their server, like, space. So, like, I understand why there's not a lot of free ones out there. And Midjourney is a subscription. I don't know about Dolly, but I think it is as well. Adobe just released theirs called Firefly, Adobe Firefly, that comes with their subscription. So it feels free if you have an Adobe subscription.
There you go.
Yeah, and that one's actually pretty good. I've been liking Firefly a lot. For just, those are just static images, you know, for character portraits or, you know, whatever you want. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, did we want to get into writing, storytelling with AI, this whole new beast that is before us? I might close this down just so it's not taking any of my space.
Sounds good.
We kind of just threw this together, so I don't entirely have a structure.
Right.
What sparked this really was that Josiah started working with it to, I don't know what you call it, generate, come up with. Like, what is the language here?
Well, so I had an idea that, hey, maybe I wanted to make a short film. And, which I'm sure we all have that sometimes. But I have, like, I don't know what it should be about. As per usual, it was, my thoughts lent themselves towards a Star Wars fan film or a lightsaber choreography competition entry or saber comp entry. I think we have it up on screen, or we could have it up on screen, but my very first prompt,
yeah,
I just wrote...
getting it set up here.
Yeah. I just wrote, there's multiple opponents that are facing off against each other using lightsabers and other weapons. Why are they fighting?
Here, I'm going to scooch in. There we go.
There. Yeah, I can scoot this way too. Well, yeah, however you want.
So I can reposition us. Okay.
Yeah, so I just wrote, why are they fighting? Because I don't know, I just wanted to see what it would come up with.
I see, yeah.
So I think it answered in the very diplomatic way. I can't provide specific context for the reason why people are fighting. Here are some reasons. So at that point, you kind of have to realize that you sort of have to prompt it a little bit more because it doesn't have enough to go off of.
Yeah. That's what I found is like working with it is all about your skill at prompting.
Right. Like you have to. I found in this process that I was the one who was being creative, and the AI was just blurting out things and like throwing out words that were sparking my creativity. It wasn't that I was like I could have come up with this story on my own. Actually, I felt like I did because the AI, which we'll get into the stories because I actually have 2 in this thread. But ChatGPT didn't really like help other than like towards the end it started rephrasing some of my words and stuff. But but in this early stage I'm just like, what do you have to say about people fighting? And it's like nothing. So I said,
awesome.
What if one of the characters is searching for a new beginning? Because I knew that was something that was a theme I wanted throughout the thing. So I just thought, well, why don't I just state the theme, see what it has to say.
Says, in the context of a science fiction universe, the character may be looking for a new planet or civilization to settle or start a new life.
Right. So that's kind of the other thing, as I found that ChatGPT tends to just say the first thing that would have come to my head, or like anyone's head, which is just, well, yeah, they're trying to find a literal new beginning, and it's not like, there's not a metaphor there suddenly. But in that way, I think it's one of Pixar's rules. I can't remember which one, but...
Is it the one that
Oh, do you find it?
That I have?
Wow, look at that. Let's do that one.
So this is kind of, what I discovered working with it. It's all about this Pixar rule, which is discount the first thing that comes to mind, and the second, third, fourth, fifth. Get the obvious out of the way, surprise yourself. This is what ChatGPT seems to do for me as a writer, is just get all the obvious out of the way.
What are the obvious things that I should get out of the way? And it lists them all, and then I go, okay, none of that, try again. That's exactly it. So so with this story, like it said, it's just like, oh, a new beginning, well, let's take that literally. And I'm like, well, I kind of wanted that more figuratively. So you got to write a new prompt, which I said, so this is where I started being creative, because this didn't come from the AI itself. I just said, write 2 backstories for slaves who are forced to fight in a gladiator fight for their freedom. Why are they fighting, and why would each of them want to win? So I basically told it to come up with backstories for 2 different people, which I think I had to... Oh, it said backstory 1, backstory 2. Cool. And these ones were, again, like, very obvious. Like, they want to win because they want to win.
Because achievement.
Yeah.
Freedom. Because the only chance she has to gain to her freedom and escape her oppressive life. She wants to win to finally achieve her lifelong dream of being free.
Right. There's, like, not really any subtle freedom in there. So the thing it did do is just come up with 2 names, and so I stuck with those names throughout the rest of the thing as Talia and Khalil.
He wants to win to show his oppressors that he is strong and worthy of respect, and to prove to himself that he is capable of overcoming any obstacle.
Right.
It's just, it's a little...
shallow.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about this one too, is what we actually expect stories that are about freedom to explore is, what does it mean to be free? Not necessarily like, how do you achieve freedom? Like, buried a surface layer under there is, what does it mean to be free? And that's what it's kind of missing.
Right.
When it's like, and she just wants to be free. 'Cause free.
'Cause freedom. Yeah.
Which we can interpret. Like, we can add our own understanding of freedom to it. But... it just comes across as very... Right.
So my next prompt, again, I had this, reading those backstories, not really much. Just like, or more like prompting my my own inner ChatGPT, my own neurons firing and making connections, I had this visual of like the film opening with this like flashback, and it gave me a name, so I just used it, Talia, and she's like a young mom who's being ripped from her daughter, and so she wants to get back to her daughter, and that's why she wants to be free. So like my prompt has all of the like emotion in it, and so I was just like, just keep writing from there. What did I say? I said another prisoner shows up and he appears to be kind, so I kind of gave it like this like what happens next sort of idea. And so it started writing a script for me. I didn't, because I was writing in such, I guess, story fashion, it sort of started writing a script.
Yeah, and it just does the whole scene where...
Yeah, it just kind of like finished the scene.
They share their hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I like that one. As the hours pass, they share their hopes and dreams. I'm like, wow, okay.
I mean, it is somewhat of a accurate summation of what happens in scenes like that. You know, it's, you want to understand why people do what they do, which involves hopes and dreams. So I understand, but it's also like just the language sounds funny.
So I did, in preparation for talking about it, I learned a little bit more about how ChatGPT works, and I'm actually like, it was actually really surprising, because I'm trying to sum it up, but basically it took what the training data that they fed it is, or the GPT model, not specifically ChatGPT, because it's based, I don't know really how all the generations work, but they fed GPT-3 or GPT-1 all of every word in the English language, like a list of them, and like all of the literary work, or maybe they had it kind of generate the list of every word in the English language. But basically they have, if you imagine a two-dimensional space, you know, just like a flat plane, and you're like a word cloud, I guess, you're arranging words that are similar to each other, closer to each other. So it did that, but it's in like, but if you expand that to like 3 dimensions, then you have a little bit more space. So I think it's like 170,000 dimensional space where all the words have a line connecting it to every other word that could possibly follow it, or like is connected to it. It's
a, what do they call it, a predictive word model? What is the...
Predictive text?
Predictive text model.
So it's like just
it's
a super...
language.
It's a super advanced predictive text. So basically what the learning aspect of it is, it went through and all of the lines have a certain percentage weight of like how often, you know, and is follow each other. I'm picking really bad words, but so yeah, it says like this has a certain probability of being next to each other, and so
like book and page as opposed to book and Santa hat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So those two things are closer together in its big, in its training data, and so what it is doing, literally, when you type a prompt and you hit enter, is it's reading your prompt and then the last word in your prompt, and running a calculation that is calculating the probability of what the next word should be. That's it. That's all it's doing. And
but so, on 170,000 dimensional.
Right, but all the but it's been trained. The probability has been trained on every like human literature in English, like ever. And so so that's the reason it sounds human, is like because probability says it does. That's kind of the thing that was surprising to me, is like, so yeah, it writes one word, says this is the next word that should come after that, and then it reads its own word and says what should come after that, and you have this. So I don't really know why it ever stops. Like, I don't know, somewhere in there they programmed it to finish. Okay,
we finished the answer.
Right, and so when you say make it shorter, like that's all it's kind of doing, is just stopping earlier. Maybe, I'm not really sure. So it's probably more complicated than that, but it's like I don't really understand how it even sounds human, or how it's capable of doing, of, you know, like saying, summarize this, because it doesn't like read the whole thing and think about it and take all the elements, and it's just doing one word at a time.
Right.
With the word summary. And so it kind of like thinks like, oh, what happens in a summary, I guess. I don't know.
It's really weird to think about because it's not thinking.
Right, it is. It's not really thinking.
It's not.
It's a calculation.
It doesn't understand ideas, is I guess what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so we can keep going through my prompting list there, but yeah, I kind of wrote out that scene, which was again really just bare bones. I think I asked the question again here, why. Oh, so this is the other story. This is kind of the start of the other story, because I was working on 2 ideas. Because I really liked this like gladiator fight idea, but I knew that getting an actress to play Talia would make that, like, the motivation of a mother-daughter connection, like, that would be really strong. But I was like, well, I don't really know if you know, the people that I know would want to actually make this short film. So I started thinking more practically, like, okay, why would a young man want to fight? And so it was giving me some, what is it saying?
A traumatic event in his past, such as the murder of a loved one, where he felt powerless to stop it. Yeah, and it just kind of continues.
This could be shown through flashlights.
The visual contrast between his past trauma and his current determination to fight could be a powerful motivator for the audience to root for him and see him succeed.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of vague still.
But it sort of took my idea. Like, I had already written that for the Talia character, and it was just like, well, let me just expound on that.
What is this supposed to comedy?
So, I love this question, because just, like, throwing another genre at it, like, I feel like that breaks it out of that initial, like, getting all the bad ideas out sort of idea, where it's just like, yeah, what if it was a comedy? And, you know, I'm open to making a comedy, and so it's kind of like, what are some funny reasons that, you know, what are some light, jovial reasons that a man would want to fight?
The young man could have a deep fear of conflict and violence due to traumatic childhood experience, but through a series of misunderstandings, he ends up in a gladiator arena and must fight to survive. A comedic mishap could occur, like his opponent accidentally hitting himself with his own weapon or slipping on a banana peel. It's so tropey, but it's so funny.
Right.
As the audience laughs at the ridiculousness of the situation, the young man could realize that he's not as powerless as he thought.
So it's trying to add some, like, character arc in there, but, at least for me, I didn't like any of those ideas.
Wait till you get to what I was doing with it.
Oh.
I got frustrated with it.
Yeah.
We'll get to it.
What if it was a time loop? Because, I don't know, I thought that could be a cool idea to make it like a time loop movie.
He is stuck in the loop because he didn't stand up for himself or someone else in a past conflict, and he needs to learn how to fight back in order to break the cycle. It's kind of like Groundhog's Day sort of time loop.
Right.
As he continues to repeat the same day, he starts to learn how to fight and defend himself. This could be kind of fun, though. Like,
yeah, Groundhog. Well, I mean, that's kind of
it has more
Edge of Tomorrow.
But yeah, that sequence from Edge of Tomorrow in it.
Yeah.
As well as his own personal growth and development as he learns to stand up for himself and fight back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to have an understanding that stories are about growth.
Yeah.
I found that as well.
I think this was me trying to get a visual out of it, because I was thinking about, like, well, how could I do a gladiator arena with, you know, minimal cast and crew and, you know, a small production. And so I was thinking about, like, ooh, what if the audience was like holograms? I know some visual effects. I could, like, what's like a cool imagery for the audience being holograms, but maybe it could be done practically or easily or something. So I don't think that one went anywhere. We don't have to read that whole big paragraph.
So it wanted to project them onto the walls?
Or something like that. I think the picture I got was like, it was a really small, like, instead of thinking like a gladiatorial arena where it's open to the sky and you hear all the crowds like cheering, if it was like a private black back closet room with like cameras, and so it's being like live streamed and like more dystopian arena, instead of a big gladiatorial arena. I guess that's kind of Hunger Games style, or so where the audience doesn't actually have to be right there, and in every shot as a visual effect. Yeah, what are some interesting situations that would start a lightsaber duel between two young men?
A disagreement over training techniques, dispute over a love interest, a mission gone wrong, a case of mistaken identity, and accidental injury. What's a silly reason? That's your next prompt.
Yeah. Well, what if it was a comedy?
A dispute over the last slice of pizza. We've seen this sort of model in the lightsaber fight competition before.
Yes. A lot of people do. It's the cookie or the pizza or, I don't know, a lot of the comedies, which I like a lot of those types of short films because they're easily understandable and relatable, but it's a very tropey thing to say.
A competition for who can do the best lightsaber tricks. A disagreement over which Star Wars movie is the best.
Yes.
Misunderstanding over cosplay outfit. One of the young men misunderstands the other's cosplay outfit, mistaking it for a costume from a different franchise.
That's not a bad idea. I'm not sure how,
It's very nerdy.
It is very nerdy.
I don't think we're nerdy enough.
I know.
To pull it off.
It's like, I can't think of any Star Wars things that, would look like a Star Trek thing. They kind of have their own styles, so...
A game of who can hold the lightsaber the longest.
Okay, so this was then my idea, based on my own prompt again, which was two young... what did I say?
Two apprentices of a Sith Lord are sent on a mission, but each are told that the other plans to kill them. What's a unique location or more backstory?
Yeah, it had some interesting location ideas.
An abandoned space station. Once they arrive, they realize they've been set up to fight each other. Could be interesting because it has multiple levels, tunnels, rooms, offering plenty of opportunities to engage in a thrilling lightsaber duel.
Yeah, so that would be something where I'd use that Skybox AI to kind of visualize some space station, but I didn't know how to do that practically, so I didn't follow that thread. Backstory.
Test of loyalty by their own Sith Lord. It's a test to see which apprentice will come out on top.
Yeah, so I think that was kind of the first idea that I actually started running with, but I feel like I already had it. That's a lot of what ChatGPT does, is it writes out a thought that I already had. Because, even in my original prompt, it was two apprentices of a Sith Lord are sent on a mission and told that each other is supposed to kill each other. It's that kind of inherently has the setup of, testing their loyalty. But it what's interesting is that it found that and described it. So, yeah, I don't know.
That fits the theme of new beginnings, doesn't it? The outcome of the lightsaber duel could lead to a new beginning for the winner. At the same time, the loser may face a new beginning of their own as they're forced to reconsider their loyalties and seek a new path forward. Yeah, so not a traditional idea of new beginnings, but more creative.
Right.
I don't know if it's more creative. It's just less obvious.
Yeah, just kind of getting down to an actual theme thing. And then I think at this point I decided to tell it what I was doing, just to see if it would contextually kind of shift.
Yeah, I'm trying to write a lightsaber duel short film. And then it kind of gives you instructions on what to do.
Yeah, how to make a short film.
That's interesting for other people, I think. If you don't know how to, craft a story at all, this will be a good training tool because it'll give you lots of ideas of what kind of questions you need to be asking and what problems are you going to be confronting here.
Yeah, potentially. If you just keep asking it questions, which I think I do later. I asked it, or maybe I did it in another thread. I said, what is a 5-act structure? What is this? And it like wrote it all out like it was in a, like it would have been in a, filmmaking book or something. But I just wanted to know that sort of information.
That's interesting because you get to learn it in the context of what you're working on, which is much more effective.
Yeah.
Than just reading a book at some point in your life.
The only thing that I'm like wary of is that, yes, it read all the filmmaking books, and yes, it knows that, but it is, like I said, just it is actually generating the text from the last word, and so it just generates whatever sounds most probable, and not what is actually true. So a lot of things, it's like, well, that sounds right, and yes, there's books written on that, so it probably read those books, but this isn't copy and paste out of the book from an author. This is it kind of remaking it up. So I don't always trust it with all that information, but sometimes it gives me like words that I can go search in Google or other places, that I'm like, oh right, that's what it's called. I could only remember this one word and it described it for me. So in that way, it is still helpful. It's just take everything with that grain of salt, that it might not be telling you the truth about how things work.
Interesting. I would think that it's the opposite, though, with theory. Like, I could understand that about, like, facts.
Oh, yeah.
But theories? Because wouldn't it have the cumulative probabilities of many books on the theory?
Yeah.
And so it's the more... It'll be just the more prevalent understanding of the theory.
Right. If one fact just showed up
but...
once, it's not going to get that right. But if there's lots of books talking about the theory and they all kind of line up with each other, yes, I feel like it's a higher chance that it'll be right and more accurate. And I think it might come up if I did do it in this thread. But yeah, the 5-act structure question I asked it probably is right. You can't guarantee it. And that's kind of the scary piece to me. Or not scary, but just kind of like I said, just have that thought in the back of your head, like, this might not be 100% accurate, and maybe I should actually go read the authors that know what they're talking about on this. But this is a good starting place to get me thinking about some things before having to purchase a book or something like that, which is a little scary. It's just if we're talking about in the world where it's like someone's creative. Someone put a bunch of effort into writing a book, and now ChatGPT read it, and it's just, I thought about, what if I just write, tell me the story of the 3 little pigs, or whatever, and have it, or, tell me, ask it to write a book for me, or write out a book that I wanted to read.
I want 3 Little Pigs, but a sci-fi dystopian story about...
Not actually changing it. What if I just asked it to literally what is the 1980 edition of 3 Little Pigs, and just have it write out the whole thing? Is that copyright infringement? Because
I believe so. I think it's still treated that way. I've been seeing lots of warnings on all of the videos that I've been watching about kind of how to do this, and that they're all and you have to change it. You have to put it into your own words or whatever when you're doing things like that, because you're liable for plagiarism.
Right.
I don't know if you are currently liable for plagiarism, or it's just definitely you are going to be in the future once the law catches up with the technology.
You already know deep down that that's wrong, and so just don't do it. Yeah.
But you could do it in interesting ways, though. Take 3 Little Pigs, make it a sci-fi dystopian story about perseverance, but write it for a 2-year-old. And then
publish it,
and then have someone illustrate it and publish that.
Have an AI illustrate it.
Yeah.
And then you publish it. Yeah. No, that's kind of crazy that you could do that. So, kind of the whole process on your own like that. But yeah. Anyway, so I don't know if we want to keep going through my prompt thing, or speed through it, or if you had some other thoughts that you wanted to get to.
I'm just kind of seeing the same pattern where it's... Okay, so we get here where you actually wrote something out.
Right. So I took the names it gave me and I wrote what I was envisioning in my own head, because that's how I see stories. I don't see arcs, I don't see characters, I usually see moments. Like, oh, it would be so cool if this sequence happened like this. So like I wrote earlier, there's a flashback, or, you know, I was like, oh, I could see it where it's really dramatic with this deep voice that's like telling us the way of the Sith, and then we cut into, you know, a throne room sort of situation, and we do that for a very short scene, and to kind of set up this story, and so I wrote, yeah, what I kind of was thinking as far as how that could play out editing wise, because that's how I saw it in my head. It's all edited together, and so yeah, I just asked it
to keep going.
Yeah, I just wrote scene 4 :
I like this one.
And then Vane is Vane is the secret Jedi.
You had to let the AI know the twist coming.
Right, because I had that already. I just I couldn't write the scene, which it actually did. I mean, really, without subtlety, but.
And then you ask about titles.
Yeah.
And then you're working on titles for a while. What are synonyms of apprentice? This is some of what I really enjoyed with it, is the ability to do research with it. Not a specific facts, but like it's just so much easier to condense a lot of information into one place so that you can analyze
like reference it.
Yeah, well, in what you're doing is creating those random connections that nobody else would make. And that's the creativity part, but they can put it all in front of you so that you can.
Right, well, because I could go on a thesaurus and write what is, you know, a synonym for an apprentice, or I could just write it here and it lists it out really quick, and then I'm like, well, that's not quite, and then I, you know, ask it for another thing, and I have all of those words right there to just sort of mull over. Like, I feel like none of this is something you couldn't do before. It's just all in one place is kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's all in one place, and you don't have to break your train of thought to, what website do I need to go to, blah, 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 blah.
Right, yeah.
No, that's not quite right. Let me go down a different rabbit trail. You know, is much easier to do within ChatGPT. It's kind of like, so the learning tools are research, record, relate, reason,
rhetoric.
And so it's like it can take care of the research and record portion, and you're simply doing the relating. Some of the reasoning too. But like you're reasoning together, you and the AI. Yeah. And so it's taking over that beginning portion that seems to be one of the most helpful things, where it's like,
I don't know if I would want it to take over.
No, because you can tell that it can't, or at least
it can't research to the depth that I want.
My ability to prompt it at least can't get the research that I'm at so far, but maybe I'm bad at prompting. Right.
Well, so another thing, I don't have images for it, that I did with ChatGPT the other day, is I wanted to learn about a specific type of juniper tree. It came up in something and I was like, what is that? You know, what is that about? And so I looked on Wikipedia and I followed, and they have all these scientific names for the different genuses, and told me that there's 30 different types of juniper, and I was like, but I wanted a specific one. How do I figure out more about that? And there was like limited information on Wikipedia, and I couldn't really find like, what does it even look like? What, you know, all these things, because I didn't really know what I was talking about. And so I went to ChatGPT and I just asked it about, like, from that research that I did, I was asking it about this certain tree and like what sort of lifestyle it lives, and you know, like how where you can find it, how it looks and stuff. Anyway, so it was kind of interesting in that sense, because it was like consolidating a lot of like research for me, but it was more like taking all the research and just putting it into language I could understand, because it was all there in the genuses and these different pages and stuff. I didn't know what I was looking at. Yeah, or looking for, yeah. So in that way, I do agree with you, but it's like, it's not really researching for me like, you know, you would have a researcher, because it's not able to go deep enough. It's just kind of allowing you to sort of scan all of the sources at the same time in this mixed, like, but also understandable language, I guess. And then as far as recording, I guess I don't know.
My understanding of recording is something like gathering of information that is personalized to you.
Okay.
So it's driven by what you want to record, which is connected to why you wanted to research this thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I could see that because each of these ChatGPT threads, sort of that I have at least, I just have a sidebar full of like different like things that I wanted to like sort of delve into, and some of them are just like, oh, okay, whatever. And I actually delete most of them. Like I start a chat and then I just go, I don't really care, and then I delete it. Yeah, so that is kind of interesting because they're each of them is like a little folder, a little collection of things that I've researched that are personal to me, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You suggest the title Only Two.
And it just likes that title. That's all.
It offers its positive reinforcement.
Yeah, ChatGPT is very good at positive reinforcement if you're needing that. You just say, what do you think of this? And it'll be like, I think that sounds great.
Here's all the good things about it that I can see.
Yeah.
You have to specifically ask, like...
Critique this, please.
Yes, critique this, please.
Can you suggest any changes, is usually how I phrase it. So I think this is, again, I was writing in a Google Doc off to the side, just like copying and pasting some of what ChatGPT said, but also totally rewriting it myself into a whole like story. And I asked it to finish. Yeah.
I am a Jedi, Xander, a secret one. I am here to save you from the dark side.
I am a secret one. And it's like, I know, the title should be The Secret Jedi. And I was like, well, not subtle. Not subtle, ChatGPT. Yeah. So then I switched back to trying to come up with titles for the Gladiator story, because I was kind of working on these simultaneously. I did this all in like 2 evenings, I think, most of it, so I just kind of stayed up way too late, just oh, that's an idea. Having fun with that. Oh yeah, so I kind of boiled down my 2 Sith apprentices into a outline, and I just kind of asked it to sort of write out.
Flesh it out.
Yeah, flesh it out.
Cool.
Because at that point I kind of had an idea of what the story should do.
So it's kind of writing you a little treatment here.
Yeah. Although most of it was, I found that it tended to just like take the line that I wrote and just like write another line on it. I don't know if we can find one of those, but it's like, yeah, where is that?
Well, that's how it came up with the I am a Jedi, Xander.
Yeah.
Your script was just going along, and Xander's like, and they just started writing.
Yeah.
I'm a Jedi, a secret one.
A secret one. Yeah, so Vane reveals he's an undercover Jedi, and I think, yeah, so it says that again. Vane reveals that he's actually an undercover Jedi. So it just kind of took a lot of my verbiage, which I thought was interesting, and it just like added a paragraph to it all. So I didn't find that fleshed it out to be particularly helpful, because it was just kind of like, okay, I already knew that, and you just like, instead of like delving into why these characters might be doing that or whatever, it just made it longer. Like made what I said longer. You know, it didn't add anything to it. Yeah.
So did you just feed it back its own outline, or did you?
I did. I think I literally just copied that and pasted that and said, "Can you expound on this?"
And it broke it down into an outline.
It broke it down into acts, yeah. Although it was 4 acts.
Yeah, that's typical.
Okay. So that's when I asked it, can you describe it as or can you just describe a 5-act structure? So this was more like copy and paste out of a book sort of style, which I thought was pretty helpful. It loves the word certainly. I like. It's interesting how ChatGPT. Certainly.
It's like our family goes, indeed.
Yeah. It's got its own little language. Certainly. So then I think I was writing off on the side, and I asked it to flesh out my outline again. I copied and pasted different parts of it and made my own edits. So I just asked it to kind of like read back what I had done, and it responded with, "I think your edits are great." It likes to tell me recently at least, I've been experiencing it telling me, because I've been doing that a lot, I've been like feeding it a whole chunk of text and asking if it had edits, and then incorporating that and then doing it again, and like doing that like 3 times to sort of like as like a proofreader almost, because it'll spell check automatically and sort of like rephrase some things. So I read through it all again, and I just like pull out the parts that I like better, and at the end of the process, sometimes it just says, I say like, so I've been like, oh, I changed this a little bit or whatever, I type that in, and it'll respond back, oh, you should, you totally like take everything from me and like change it how you want it to be in your own voice. I think that's interesting that it's like, it sort of has to like reassure that behavior. I don't know, but
you said, do you have any suggestions? It says add more sensory details, show the conflict more, add more backstory, consider adding a twist, add it for clarity. I've gotten some of these things too where it just kind of hands me a list, and I'm like, I don't feel like this is the list for my story. It just feels like a list.
Right, it's just a list for any story. These are
things you should do for a story when you're coming to the end of developing it.
Right,
and it's like,
yeah.
Well, I knew that. I was asking for particular instructions. You said, can you add more
about
showing the conflict more and
consider adding a twist. So I think it had a lot of interesting suggestions in this one. I can't remember.
As they walk together, Xander talks about the evil conquest they can accomplish as a Sith. Here's the twist. As he seems to be leaving, Xander defeated. He seems to be leaving. When Vane turns his back, Xander seizes the moment and lunges once more. Was that there before?
I can't remember. Vane, I wrote, Vane gives Xander a chance to leave and never return. Xander nods, and as he turns, Xander seizes the moment to lunge once again, yeah. But I don't know if ChatGPT came up with that or I did.
And so you're just kind of playing around with these suggestions that it gave you, and it keeps writing it out and adding new things and stuff like that?
Yeah, so at this point I'm just like taking my whole script or sections of it, pasting it, doing exactly what I said, which is just like taking it over to a Word document, editing it, and then pasting that back in ChatGPT and asking for suggestions. And it will like, so it's like slowly like building on itself. And, you know, like, and I'm adding certain elements like a mask on his face, on one of their faces, and the whole time I'm thinking about the story. So I do, like, I think I already have, but I was just stressing that, like, I was doing a lot of creating in this. I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. You know, like, what if I do that? And then I kind of like, what do you think, ChatGPT? And it sort of, like, expounded, and I go, no, this is a better idea, and then I'd write that out. Like, I felt like I was doing that a lot, but having it sort of initially just, like, say the obvious, and me just kind of going, no, that's not what I was thinking. But sometimes it had, you know, some interesting ideas. I can't remember. So, yeah, by the end, I didn't feel like it gave me any ideas. It was more like a thinking buddy, like someone to talk to, something to talk to. and like think through my ideas, because I tend to think very verbally, where I'm just talking and I just end up stream of consciousness talking, and so that's kind of what I felt like I was doing. I was just like, this is like someone, you know, like if you have a friend and you're in a little chat thread and you're like, hey, read my newest version of my script, what do you think, you know, and I was just getting back the barest minimum, you know, because a person would do more, but it would just kind of expound on certain things, and so I'd be like, ooh, I like how it phrased that, and then so at this point I was kind of focused on like polishing my already like finalized story. I can't remember if I get back to the Gladiator one or if I left it off here, but
well, this is the end of
oh, that's the end. Okay, yeah. I think I did some more writing on the Gladiator story with Talia and Khalil, because I ended up writing like a draft of each of these scripts and kind of posted them as like, okay, you know, like if you were to, which movie would you want to watch, you know, but I made it in like 2 days, you know, and so
yeah, it's
I guess
like,
that's a lot.
It's helping you streamline your creativity so much, and I don't quite have the language for why.
Right.
Except for that it's doing a lot of the processing for you. I don't really know how to say it any other way. Because, except for what we talked about with the Pixar rule, that
just like getting all of the bad ideas.
A lot of the work of what you're doing, why it takes a while, yeah, is because you have to go through all of these ideas. And this is just like so much faster.
It's like, yeah, instead of like idea, does anyone have another one? Oh, idea, and like tossing up to the side, you're just like, give me 20 ideas, and you're like, no, yes, no, and then you're like on to the next thing, like just faster.
Right, and it's faster than your brain can process through the ideas. Now, it's not always deep processing, and that's what I kind of ran into a little bit, but I started figuring out, I think, how to work with it.
Okay.
For a little bit more deep processing.
Yeah.
I was still doing like the human level processing. I can tell that it doesn't understand entirely what a story is.
Yeah.
Like it knows all the pieces.
It knows structure, and it knows like good like sentence structure and writing and interesting adjectives and stuff like that, but it doesn't really know like why you would make a story. Basically like theme and
well, it can suggest theme, and it can analyze theme.
Yeah.
But it can't connect like, I don't know how to... It can't abstract lessons from life.
Right.
To build a story. And so it just has all the stories that have already been told. It's a hard thing to describe. But this was pretty fun. I was going to go see if anyone answered my poll on
Sure.
Instagram. Probably not. Yeah, I don't see any.
There's a poll on Instagram, by the way.
If you'd like to go check that out. Yeah, so I think that was a really interesting look at how you would think about doing. I wanted Josiah to come talk about it too, because you're not a writer.
Right. I've dabbled in writing, but like these, what I ended up with were like 2-3 page scripts, and it was like the most writing I felt like I've ever done. I was like, thanks ChatGPT, you really helped there. So yeah, no, I'm not a writer. Like I said, I visualize edits and like sequences, I think, and like what could be kind of like fun to watch. And some like emotional on a certain emotional level, but as far as like where this whole thing is going and arcs and characters and interesting elements, I tend to think of like one thing at a time, like, ooh, this would be a really interesting world, or ooh, that would be a really interesting character, and then I kind of like, I don't really know what to do with that idea other than tell a writer about it.
I guess that's what I was meaning by it was doing all the processing, because that's what it was doing. It was suggesting, and I think you hit right on the right track right away, because you were asking about motivations.
Okay.
And characters are driven by motivations.
Right.
And so that started like building arcs and plots out of that, because that's kind of what you have to do.
Okay, because I sort of asked it to.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that because I was working on another story the other day with ChatGPT and to see if I could kind of recreate, because this thread that we were just showing you guys was definitely my most successful thread of getting somewhere, because it actually produced like writing, and there was another one I was trying to work on a story idea with it, and I was just like, no, yeah, like ChatGPT just didn't get me, whereas for some reason it kind of did. I felt like it sort of did on this one. So maybe that's what you're kind of saying, is like start with, if you really wanted to like help you with an arc, like talk about motivation, or you know, like,
because it definitely understands the idea of arcs,
right?
And so it'll start building them for you.
Yeah.
So you can ask
or at
about
least,
lessons, or what are common story arcs, or what is the best story arc for a comedy, or you know, you learn enough about story theory to understand like the drive. And that's going to be motivation and desire sort of stuff. Sure.
Yeah. Cool. I'll have to think about that. Yeah.
Alrighty. I had some thoughts based off of my journey with ChatGPT the past couple of days.
Yes.
I think this is about I would say this is close to about 5 hours of work that I'm gonna show you, but that's like over 3 days, like an hour here, 2 hours here,
right?
You know,
and that's pretty impressive. I mean, I haven't seen what you've worked on, but that, like,
I'm
for
impressed.
5 hours, yeah, for 5 hours.
Impressed.
If you were to be all by yourself for 5 hours, would you come up with that? Yeah.
All right. But just to kind of reiterate, kind of what I'm realizing, this is the guiding thing. It's about this idea about processing through all of the bad ideas.
Yes.
To get to the actual sparks that are actually going to ignite your creativity and be like, and I'm connected. But it's like why it's still you and why you're still creative, because you're still the one creating the connections. And that's what I guess I meant by you can't abstract lessons out of life. Like, you can abstract a lesson and connections out of that idea that it's not really able to do. Or at least not with the prompts that we have here.
Right.
And maybe they're just kind of basic. You're basic. But that's because I've only used it for about 5 hours at this point.
Right. I know, that's kind of the other thing, is like I like using ChatGPT, but there's sometimes I'm like, oh, I should like get into this more. I should figure out more like about this, you know, and like kind of incorporate it into my workflows and stuff like that. And then I sit down and I go, what? Like, I sort of have like, you know, writer syndrome, because it's just a blank page with a text box, and you're like, okay, what do I write? And so sometimes, yeah, they're like the strangest. That's what I was saying. I just like start threads and then delete them, because I'm just like
going.
I'm just like, what?
I definitely found that.
What
too.
do I need to think?
So I did two things. I started a brand new story, and I also fed it a finished script and asked, like, how can I make this better? And I was working on some of the problems that I already knew that it had.
Okay.
And I found it was not nearly as good at. I was not as happy with the results of having it look at a script that I've already done, but I think it's because I already have a really solid idea of what I want, and so the random, like, we're just throwing ideas out there and let's explore this, didn't really suit where I was in the process.
Right. Because you were way further along. You had already done that and solidified things, and like, all I can help you with is grammar at that point.
Or I could just make vague suggestions, you know?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't happy with the character introductions. And so I was like, what would be some ways to introduce this character? And it just gave me the most, like, Aaron, let's explore this.
Oh, excuse me.
Vague, like, general, well, some good ways to do it are. And I was like, yeah, I know, but, like, okay. I think to bring a little bit more systemization to this, if you guys watched my writer's block video, then I've already talked a little bit about this, but what I found myself doing was, because I know my own process a little bit more than I think you know, I was able to systemize it a little bit better. And so this is what I'm calling the big picture creative process. This applies to anything creative, not just writing. But you have a spark, you have your idea, you develop your idea, you're adding ideas, you're doing research, bringing it all together, and then you actually create the thing. So for a writer, that's where you actually, you know, draft. You write the thing. And and then perfect, editing, refining, all of those sort of things. And then reflect is just kind of the last piece in the cycle as a writer having an entire process for your whole life. It's kind of just part of it is like you have to stop and be, okay, so what did I learn from that? What would I do differently? Like, and that in that process you get a new spark for a new story.
Right.
And you go through the process over and over again. So there's kind of like macro, big picture, and this also happens at micro level. Like if you're just working on one draft, you're like, this is the thing that I'm trying to do with the draft, and I developed that idea, and I did it, and now I'm refining just that idea. And
so you
on
can
the
apply
next draft,
you can,
I have
you can apply all of this cyclical process granularly or big picture. Okay.
Anywho, so what I realized is with ChatGPT is you can kind of do most of these with it. So Spark is kind of where you started. You're like, I need a story.
Yeah.
I need a story.
Why would two people fight each other? Because I got nothing.
got nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And then once you've development is definitely, and I don't know if this is just because I'm a heavy plotter writer.
Sure.
Like development is where I spend most of my time anyway. But this is definitely where I found that most help from ChatGPT is just you have to build a lot, and having somebody else to just shorten all of the processing that you have to do was very, very helpful.
Okay.
Creates is a lot of what you were doing. You were just saying, okay, keep writing the scene.
Right.
You know, and there's a lot of. I found that you could do that. Just say, okay, this is the scene that I want. It's a mom talking to her son about this, and it's gonna be resolved this way. And if you've given ChatGPT, why is my camera blinking red?
I don't know.
Is it gonna die?
Hopefully not. Is it too hot?
Yeah, it keeps getting too hot.
There might be an intermission, a forced intermission. We don't know.
Where was I?
You're saying if you're feeding it like a scene outline.
Right, if it already has the context of those characters because you've been using it the whole time to develop the characters, then it's actually able to bring in quite a bit of what you've already developed.
Right. That's kind of one thing I've heard a lot of people do is they make a thread for each of their characters as like their characters live in that thread and they just like talk with them. And then they have like their story thread. And so you like train it how to talk, like how to have all the motivations of the mom, and then you train it to have all the motivations of the daughter, and you're like, this is what mom said, and then you start like
to each other.
Yeah, you kind of feed them to each other so that they kind of end up like being the characters.
That's cool.
It does take away a lot of the like your own creativity and like guiding the scene, but like I've heard that writers do that anyway. I'm saying I've heard because I haven't actually done it myself, where they just kind of like sit there and go like, oh, this character says this, and then it's like, oh, but he wouldn't like that, so he says this, and it's like, but having ChatGPT do it,
it can produce some unexpected results. I
Right.
think that's the biggest thing is it can kind of go, whoop, that's a different idea.
Yeah, introduce that randomness.
And there's like a caution with that though. Like I said, the further that I got into developing the story, the more I was frustrated with like, but that's not where we're going. Like, hang on, back on course. I'm trying to get somewhere specific.
Right.
But so it just meant I had to get more and more specific with my prompts. And so anyway, so you can ask it to generate whole scenes, and you might not end up using the scene, but you might, you know, because it understands structure, it'll be a well-structured scene, and you'll kind of understand, oh, okay, that's the moment that the whole scene hinges on. I'm going to go write it, my own version of it, because it's going to be less cliche.
Right.
With subtext.
I mean, like, for me, in my Jedi story, it was the reveal that he was a Jedi the whole time or whatever, and they all thought he was a Sith. And so I kept having ChatGPT try to write that for me, because I kept going, like, how would you reveal that? And it just wouldn't. So I ended up having to kind of, like, think of ways for that to work. So, but
it's really good at like spit draft. This is the structure of the scene, or possible structure of the scene, and it doesn't say that. Like you have to kind of read it into that. But
true.
Anyway, perfect. Just like you said, you can feed it. I fed it my whole script and was like, "What's wrong with this? What do I need to change? What, you know? And can you fix any grammar mistakes? And what would you suggest I do?" And it gave me suggestions and stuff. So that was very interesting. I think the immediate feedback is very valuable.
Mm-hmm.
I've read a bit about motivation, about teamwork and leadership and whatnot, and that's a very common piece of advice, that if you have feedback for people, you need to give it to them as soon as possible so that they're not losing steam and excitement on their own projects.
Yeah.
And so I think it's actually quite valuable to have this immediate feedback instead of sending it out and waiting until people are available.
Yeah.
Which I get, because we all have real lives. Not all of us can just sit around computing all day.
Right. Waiting for Annie's drafts to come in. And then reflect. We kind of both talked about this a little earlier, that reflecting is about you and yourself, and so ChatGPT kind of has no place
in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see really a big purpose. I mean, if you are not well versed, or you don't feel like you can inwardly reflect very well.
Yeah.
I have been hearing some therapists talk about ChatGPT and how it can be a form of therapy, because it can offer insights into the human condition, and you can be like, I'm feeling this way, and actually treat it like your therapist, and it can this might have been because of this and this, and it's like, okay, that might go really weird directions.
I wouldn't
I don't recommend it as therapy, let me just say. But this reflect portion, you could talk to it about what you're thinking about, and it could offer additional thoughts that inform what you're
just say
about,
wow, it sounds like you're thinking. It could just say that.
Great job. We should all pause and reflect at moments. Probably say something exactly like
thanks,
that.
ChatGPT.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
I agree. Yeah, and I've done a little bit of that, where I just I'll send it something that I've about thoughts that I've had, and it just sounds like you've had some really deep thoughts. Thanks.
I try. All right, let me pull up my thinger. This gargantuan thing. Okay, that doesn't seem right. Hang on, I feel like there's a little... Why is there a little
bar?
A little black bar at the bottom. Oh well, that just is. Alright, let's go find it on my actual okay. Right.
Do you want to...
Is there a go to the top button?
I have one, but I don't know where yours is.
Okay, here we go. It took me. Okay, there we go. So.
Might be able to use the arrow keys to kind of smoothly scroll. I'm not sure.
I just started with, hi, I want you to be my writing partner today. I want to write a script for a short film, 10 to 15 pages long. I don't know what it should be about yet, but I want to focus on a strong conflict. Can you give me some ideas? So again, I did have to give it a prompt with where to start. And motivations and conflict, that's going to be a good place. So polite. Of course, I'd be delighted to help you. And then it just kind of gave me some...
conflicts?
Some... log lines. It's a complete story. So the last letter, in a post-apocalyptic world where communication is limited, 2 survivors discover a cache of old letters. Among them is a letter written by one survivor's long-lost loved one, revealing a devastating secret that puts their friendship to the test. They must confront their emotions and decide whether to share the truth or protect each other from the painful reality. So it just threw in a genre and some plot elements and some characters.
I thought that was going somewhere totally different.
So it just kind of threw things out there, and I was like, okay, this is an interesting way to start. I can kind of pick a direction. I said I think these ideas are too complex for a short film. The log line was just... You can throw everything I said about that out, though, because what I ended up coming up with, I think, is too complex for a movie. It's like a miniseries at this point.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, I said it's too complex. Let's get down to basics. What are possible conflicts surrounding friendship, or adventure, or growth? So I was able to be given that list, I was like, oh, okay, I see all the directions this could go.
Right.
Let's narrow down a little bit and understand a little bit better what I like as a writer, as a film watcher of films.
Yeah.
So it said the friendship conflict, the adventure conflict, the growth conflict, which were all the themes that I gave it. And it kind of gave me a few options for each of those.
Did you have one that you liked?
Yeah, so this spoke to me in the moment, and that's kind of why I say it can kind of go off the rails very quickly, because some of it's just, it speaks to me in this moment.
You're like, oh, cool,
You didn't actually
I like
think
that.
it through very deeply on what you were going to spend all your time on.
Right.
So I picked the adventure conflict, the treasure hunt. So a group of adventurers seeks to find a legendary treasure hidden in a treacherous jungle. As they get closer to their goal, their individual desires for the treasure start to outweigh their initial camaraderie, leading to conflicts and choices that test their friendship.
Sounds like a treasure movie.
I was like, that sounds like a fun adventure movie. Yeah, exactly. It sounds just like a treasure movie.
Yeah. Well, jungle. All we need is Dwayne Johnson. We're good. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. Let's see what we can do with this. And so I knew that where I wanted to start was with John Truby's method, which is you start with the conflict. You start with the premise, but getting to the premise is about what is the actual conflict about.
Because it just says a conflict in that log line. It wasn't the conflict.
What are we going to be fighting over? Because in John Truby's method, you don't build characters and then find conflict. You find conflict and then build character out of that conflict.
Yeah.
Which is how you use the four-corner opposition thing, which I went over in the antagonist video to great detail. Talked about it for like over an hour. So I wanted to know, did it know what four-corner opposition was? And could it just generate some for me? And unfortunately, no. It doesn't. So it recognized the name John Truby, and it kind of gave me... John Truby kind of has like this whole form that he works through. Like, okay, you start here, and then you build out here, and these are the elements of character, and these are the elements of the plot coming out of the character that you need to find. And so it kind of just threw it all in there.
Gave you a version?
A version.
Huh.
And so it created two characters, this character Alex and this character Max. And so Alex is going to be the protagonist, and it pitches Max as the antagonist to start with. And so it says, well, they can conflict about leadership, they can conflict about trust, conflict of sacrifice, or conflict of redemption. And so you can understand they don't really pit two characters against each other, or not all of them do. The leadership kind of does.
Yeah.
Trust maybe kind of does, but it doesn't explain, like, why is there no trust? Why is trust broken? How is trust made? You know, and so this doesn't really capture four-corner opposition and how it works. And so it offered a couple of plot points, and you'll find, this is why I say it completely understands story structure. Every time, almost every time I gave it a prompt, it would end it with, and this is the climax, and this is the resolution. I was like, hang on, we're not there yet.
We're not there, yeah.
I was like, what? And so, I was like, okay. I needed to find an end, I guess. And so I asked it, do you know four-corner opposition? It said, I apologize for any confusion in my response. And it's offered the 4 cornerstones from John Truby, which are kind of, I've seen these differently as the 7 key structure steps, so I was kind of confused on where this was coming from. And so it kind of redid it all again, and I was like, this is still not, I want 4-corner opposition. I want to go back to the root, figure out this conflict before we're building out characters and plots.
Right.
So I told it, let's back up a bit. What are possible motivations for wanting treasure, good and bad? I was like, let's go back to our concept. This is a treasure hunt. Let's look at treasure. Things surrounding treasure. And I kind of explained 4-corner opposition. It works by building 4 characters with conflicting values.
Okay,
and so
I was like, why is it adding characters is what I thought.
Yeah, and so it just kind of gave me here's 4 characters, Alex and Max, which we already introduced, and then these 2 characters whose names don't really matter because I changed them later anyway. And it gave them all motivations that have to do with treasure. So Alex is going to be, have the motivation of redemption and personal growth. Max is going to be selfish ambition and wealth. And then Ella, the secondary character, is going to be protecting loved ones. And Sam is a seeking thrill and glory. and legacy. So I didn't really understand how it was connecting all of these ideas. I was like, okay, this is a little bit interesting. I was like, wealth. What does wealth mean, and why is it a negative? Because it kind of poses a negative because Max is the antagonist. And so I said, well, what are values that conflict with the value of wealth? So I'm diving into, like, what does all this mean? What is the meaning?
It's like, I don't know, I just wrote out something. But
and so it just gave me some things, and I was like, this is not getting there. So I said, what are opposing values to adventure? Because this is an adventure story. And so sometimes it helps to tie the conflict to the genre. And so it started giving me some reasons not to go on adventures. Security and stability, familiarity and routine, fear of the unknown, contentment with the present, responsibility and obligations, conformity and tradition.
I mean, I can see already, Annie, that you are bringing all of your, like you were saying, you're, like, starting with story structure in mind, and so, like, when it's not giving it to you, you're a little frustrated. But I don't know, I guess that's interesting, because, as far as me, where I'm just like, make it shiny, you know, like, I don't know, I'm just seeing how, like, the more you know, the, like, almost the better a tool ChatGPT could be. Like, it's not going to be, it's based on, this is all based on your prompt. It's like, I don't know, it's not going to take a newbie like me and spit out stuff like this unless I, like, study up on John Truby and, like, you know, that's just the connection I'm making right now.
It's helpful and frustrating because it doesn't understand what I'm trying to do, which, I don't know. Could someone please train a model that understands John Truby? Okay, thank you. So we're getting past the spark phase here. I kind of have my spark. We're going to do, like, this treasure hunt story with these characters, about the relationships between the characters. And so this is also from my writer's block video. This is how I develop a story. It's very, very particular to me. This is not how it works for everyone at all. But I start with theme, and out of the theme comes the characters. And out of the characters comes the structure where you start to see, okay, this is the beginning, this is the end, this is the middle. Here's some plot elements sort of thing kind of going. And then after that is genre and plot beats. So you look more closely at the genre. What are the tropes that you have to fulfill? What are the pieces? How do you fill all the holes in your structure? And you get down to your plot beats, which is also your character arcs. And how is your character going to get, you know, from their weakness and need all the way to their self-revelation. And then I end with characters fleshing out, like, their personalities and their insecurities, how they speak, like, actually creating, like, these
little
character
traits.
Right. So realizing that not only can you walk through the, like, big picture creative process with ChatGPT, you can walk through this process with ChatGPT. And I know this is how I work, and so it can just kind of process all of this with me. And that's what I kind of started to do. So I realized it just didn't really understand what I was going for, and so I said, write an essay about the metaphorical significance, spiritual significance, and practical significance of treasure.
Okay.
And that was a very interesting thing.
Okay.
I was glad I did this.
Put that up on screen.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Because I can see it, but... there we go.
So you guys can see. So it wrote me this big, long essay that I was very grateful for. It was very... I was like, okay. Kind of what I took away is that treasure isn't just about money or greed. Metaphorical significance is more about the idea of, like, inner treasure and the true, like, treasure is actually beyond money. It's not just... Because
it's whatever is valuable.
And so it's the treasure of who you are. It's the treasure of knowledge. It's the treasure could just be something that you greatly value. But it's connected to intangible riches such as love, knowledge, and wisdom. And so it's actually connected to that idea. I was like, okay, this is
Yeah, that's deeper.
some interesting things
Yeah.
to kind of think about and work with. And this is what I mean by processing. Like, I could figure this out, but I'd probably have to go read like 3 different articles and track them down and go through links, and it's like, boop, there it is, right there.
Yeah. And, you know, back to what I was saying when we were talking about that over mine, about, like, not trusting it 100%. If it makes sense to you, you know, with a lot of this theory stuff, that is kind of, like, that is your gauge. Like,
Yeah.
you know, even if that sounds about right, and you're like, sounds like a good theme, and you can work it into a theme. But if you're just taking it blindly, I think that's when you fall into that sort of, like...
Yeah, that's kind of the...
you don't know what you're talking about.
I've heard a couple different things on that, because one thing that I've heard that people are very excited about is ChatGPT's potential for education. Of how, because it's so much more closely linked to the actual learning tools, and actually applying in the moment explanations and things to what you are trying to accomplish with it.
Right.
And that is a much stronger... Anyway, there's some data showing that it could be a much faster educator. That's cool, but that's also alarming on the other side in that because it's doing all this processing for us, will it delete the ability to process in people who grow up using it? It's kind of same thing as people said with the calculator back then. It's like, okay, but like... kids aren't going to learn how to do math. They're just going to learn how to push buttons. Right. Which is somewhat true.
Yeah. I don't know how to do math as well as my parents.
Yeah. I know how to do math, but I'm not very quick at it, or...
All on my own,
It takes me a minute to think about, okay, how do we... complex math, obviously, just addition and subtraction and whatever.
Right,
That's
yeah.
simple, but... Anywho, will this... inhibit the ability to process because it's a shortcut?
I don't know. Yeah. I saw another kind of scary statistic, which I'm not sure how to process about ChatGPT. And that is, so in order to train it, we fed it all, like I said, like basically every human writing. So I saw a graph that was like every human's writing, printed writing. So basically, since the printing press, the invention of the printing press, like how much has been written and printed, or like new content. So it was this little it was like a little line that kind of went. It was slow at first, and then it kind of went up, and it's sort of, you know, still kind of going up, but sort of leveled off. And then it had ChatGPT on the same thing. On the same graph, and it's basically starting at its birth and an exponential curve that goes up
Forever.
Basically.
For all we know.
And so it's already past all of human writing.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
How much content it's pumping out. So the scary thought to me is, when is ChatGPT training itself? And what does that mean for like human thought and writing? Because yeah, where it started was what we wanted it, but at some point we're going to, as we start relying on ChatGPT, we're going to be writing less, and it's going to be writing even more than it already is. And so it's like, is there going to be like, suddenly writing is not something that humans do? Like,
well,
even like thinking.
I have a lot of thoughts on
yeah,
this.
and I don't know if I want to open that can of worms.
Different podcast.
Yeah, but so anyway, so that graph just set up, like what you were just saying, sort of reminded me of that graph where it's like, yeah, when is ChatGPT going to start self-reflecting on what it's written, and so it's just recycling itself. And so there's no new ideas. Yeah. Basically. Which I don't think can happen, because as humans we always have new ideas, but it sort of goes along with like, well, if we kind of delegate our processing to it, are we going to stop processing? You know?
I think kind of the answer to that is yes, but will it matter? Because we're going to have it to do the processing.
Yeah.
Like we have calculators to do the calculations now. You know, it's like, why would I need to learn math? I have a calculator.
Right.
And it's only the thought of being without it that goes, I don't know how to do anything.
Yeah. I'm on a desert island and I need to do long division. ChatGPT!
Okay.
No, you shouldn't have ChatGPT do math.
So, out of this essay
Yeah.
that it wrote me about treasure, I started thinking about that for a while, and built into the idea of treasure is the idea of an inner transformation being treasure.
Okay.
I was like, oh, this is very story. So I said, let's play around with the idea that the theme, the two opposing values around the theme are going to be ambition and transformation. Like, what would that look like if you create two characters, positive and negative, for each of those?
Uh-huh.
And so it did that, but it didn't have characters to add it to. Yet. I hadn't explained four-corner opposition exactly. Like, it couldn't connect four-corner opposition with this values thing.
Yeah.
It knew there needed to be four characters, but it didn't create four characters. It did not understand four-corner opposition. And I was like, I just want you to do the thing for me. But it needed a little bit more insight on that. So transformation is going to be Alex's value. Ambition is going to be Max's value. And again, it gave me the arcs and the theme and the conclusion all together. I was like, okay, we're going to finish the story. This is what the rest of it looks like.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. I eventually asked it about this. Like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But not till nearly the end. Anyway, so I was like, okay, let's keep working on this. Trying to get four-corner opposition in. What are positive and negative character traits connected to transformation? So it gave me positive traits, and then it gave me negative traits. Okay, I'm starting to see the story form. I want a plot twist character, and this character is a character who can easily adapt to exhibit other character traits. So this is the negative, a negative expression of transformation. Someone who doesn't actually kind of possess their own identity. They just kind of turn into whatever they feel they need to be in the situation they're in.
That's cool.
So she's out. This character is out to get the treasure for herself and uses all the other characters to get her there. Max has a positive arc of redemption where he starts out super ambitious, but through the journey of the story, he learns that the real treasure is the friendship. You know, it's like, this is what ChatGPT told me. I was like, oh, okay. I said I did like the idea of a positive arc because then he could be an antagonist fake out. This other character is going to be hidden. You don't know they're the villain. Max is going to seem like the antagonist and the villain for most of the story. And so having a redemption arc for him to be able to kind of switch sides or, have growth.
Adds a level.
Adds a level. I was like,
the more levels you can get with ChatGPT, the better.
Yeah. Wow, adding a plot twist character is a great idea, it says. I gave her the name Morgan. Character traits, chameleon-like, adaptability, manipulative, ambitious. And then she's just trying to get the treasure for herself, and then it goes through all of it and gives me an ending again. And I was like, okay, no. We need one more character for our four-corner opposition now. What are positive character traits connected to ambition? Because if Max is the negative expression of ambition, what would the positive expression? And so it gave me all of those. And again, this is what I mean by the processing just gets shorter and shorter, because I could think of all of that. But it would take me quite a bit of time and some research and some delving into the dictionary and like what it was, and maybe I should still do that.
Right.
If I really wanted to flesh out the story really well and understand all of the sides of the conflict or whatever. But for just like conceptualizing something, it's like, okay.
That's an idea.
It just puts it all right there so that you can, not that. Right,
yeah, you can sort through good and bad, or objectively good and bad ideas, because that's what I feel like a lot of the story stuff is like, you're looking at ChatGPT, sorting it, because it's not necessarily giving you good ideas or bad ideas, it's just listing out a bunch of ideas. And so it's up to you to kind of to kind of guide it.
So I realized that I didn't totally understand ambition. I wanted to understand it, so I did tell, okay, so what are positive attributes of ambition?
Yeah.
Wait, didn't I ask you that already?
Yeah, positive
character traits connected to ambition. So I tried to phrase it a little bit. What's the positive version of ambition? And it's pretty similar. And I don't remember exactly, and this all changed, so I don't want to go too deeply into it. But
yeah.
Through reading all of that, I came up with another character, and I figured out the four-corner opposition that I kind of wanted to run with.
Huh.
I still don't think I got it right, but so I kind of fed it, and then I asked it to kind of lay it out for me with a little bit more details and explanations, and character arcs included, because you can't not, apparently.
Yeah.
So the two values are adventure versus transformation instead of ambition. And we're going to have Alex as the positive expression of adventure, which is leadership, and Max is the negative expression of adventure, which is ambition. And maybe I don't have the words quite right. Maybe it should be the positive expression of leadership should be adventure. I don't know.
Yeah.
Morgan is the negative expression of transformation, which is toxic adaptivity. And a fourth character, Tess, is the positive expression of transformation. There is a book of knowledge hidden with the treasure that will change how researchers view history. She wants the book, not the treasure, so she can transform knowledge in history and society.
Yeah.
She's trying to bring transformation to the world. Is the positive expression.
Yeah,
a
that's
positive expression. Because I think there's many expressions of the values, and that's the creativity of the writer, is how you see it and how you connect all the dots anyway. Okay, so it wrote it all out for me. Added the hidden book of knowledge to its library of information about this. At the end, it always has to end. The treasure hunt becomes a journey of self-discovery, friendship, and the exploration of deeper meanings of adventure and transformation. With a well-crafted plot and compelling character arcs, your short film is poised to captivate audiences and leave a lasting impression about the true treasures that lie within.
Aren't you inspired, Annie?
I'm so inspired. Okay, so I wanted to test how much I knew about John Truby some more. So I said use the 7 structure keys, and I did write them out for him just so they would know. Weakness and need, desire, opponent plan, battle, self-revelation, and new equilibrium. So I said, take everything you know, try and put some plot beats here to the characters that we've already built. And I wasn't happy with that. There were some things that need to be adjusted.
Yeah.
So I just said, I don't like this idea of a weakness for Alex, our main character. Can you give me some different ideas? And so the weakness is, I think I had to correct it at some point. I probably skipped it over because it kept trying to imply that one of the opponents was like Alex's inner self. Like his inner voice. I'm like, no! That's a the inner weakness is a weakness. It's not part of the four-corner opposition. It's what you have to overcome as your character.
Okay.
And so I did have to correct it pretty earlier on when I was like, stop suggesting that as the opponent. Anyway, so weaknesses: fear of failure, lack of confidence, overthinking, insecurity in skills, past failures, introversion, difficulty trusting others. So he is he's a leader, is what he's supposed to become, and his weakness is stopping him from becoming a leader. And so these are reasons, and toward adventure, this is reasons why people would shy away from the idea of adventure.
Right.
The adventure of finding your inner treasure. And so looks like I came up with something. I liked a couple of these, and I decided, okay, let's kind of layer them a little bit, because I started seeing scenes between Alex and Max. Like, okay, because the way that it's set up, they're rivals, and so Max is kind of this loud, take charge, ambitious, we're gonna do it, but Max is actually the one in charge of the quest.
Right.
I hadn't figured out the plot elements of why yet, and so, like, why would Alex
need to be in charge?
Let him be in charge or feel conflict. If he doesn't want to be in charge,
right,
because that's his journey, why not just let Max be in charge?
Right.
So that was something that I was grappling with throughout all of this, but I started seeing scenes where Tess would kind of ask Alex, like, why are you letting him run over you like this, la-di-da-di-da, and Alex goes, well, you know, I don't like to be rude, and
Yeah.
we should all just really get along, and because that was one of the
The
it wasn't on here, maybe it was one
or
of
the fear of failure.
somewhere in here it talked about just the fear of conflict. They don't like conflict.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I said, okay, that's interesting, but I don't believe that's the deepest root of why people don't go on adventures, because they want to be polite. Like,
Yeah.
that's not how that works. So I said, let's go with fear of failure at the root of it, but what Alex displays through the story is lack of confidence. But it's also paired with this kind of pretense at humility and politeness. So he does it in the tense situations where somebody else needs to take charge because Max is leading them in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Alex doesn't, because he's like, he just doesn't feel confident.
Mm-hmm.
And then people ask him about it later, and they're like, he's like, oh, I didn't want to cause conflict, I just was trying to be polite, and you know, Max should really have his chance to shine, and you know, but at the root of it is the fear of failure. I was like, let's give us some layers, guys.
Yeah, I like that.
So it seemed to like that idea. Spit out my 7 structure keys again, kind of building that in. And couldn't resist adding it to analyzation at the end. This character arc for Alex is beautifully intertwines with themes of adventure, leadership, and personal growth, making their journey not just a physical quest, but
I know, that's what I'm trying to do.
I know!
It's exactly it.
Okay, but in this one, it kind of really pitched Alex's primary opponent to be Max. And I was like, let's change that to Morgan. Oh, here it is. In John Truby's approach, the inner voice of the main character cannot be one of the opponents. That's the weakness. And so it corrected. It was like, oh, okay.
Apologies. Yeah.
Okay, so now it made Morgan the opponent. And that started giving me plot ideas. Like, okay, so Morgan pretends to be everybody's friends at the beginning, but she ends up pitting Max and Alex against each other. Like, to Max, she's saying, oh, Alex just wants to upstage you, and he wants to be in charge, and he's jealous, like, don't let him get it. And then over to Alex, he's like, man, Max is such a jerk, like, why, you know. And,
why are you letting him run over you like that?
Right, because she sees their weaknesses, and she wants to be, what she eventually wants is for them to cede control to her, so that she can be in control of how the quest is going. I can't resist adding its analyzation at the end. Okay, so that was Alex. So I was like, okay, let's look at Max. So my process again was theme, character web. So we started with our theme. We're starting to get there. Character web, we're starting to build that out. The next thing is structure. So you kind of can see that, okay, I'm starting to see plot elements out of these characters that I'm starting to build, out of the theme that I'm starting.
Mm-hmm.
It's all kind of still fuzzy, but I can see. So it spit out an idea of what Max's could do, but I felt it was very shallow. It was like, this didn't explain much. So what are possible motivations for being ambitious? Gave me a bunch of those. And we don't have to spend a ton of time on this because it changes. So I was asking it for plot points here. I was like, can you just give me some plot points based on Alex and Morgan turning Max and Alex against each other? And so it just gave me a bunch of plot points. Again, these are very vague. It's like they can prompt ideas in me, but they're not ideas themselves.
Right. And is that what you're looking for at this stage, or was that kind of like, okay, thanks?
No, I was looking more like, okay, they start fighting over this thing, blah, 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 and then the scene, I was like, give me a descriptive scene. See, this is what I mean by I wasn't giving it good prompts to get what I wanted. I figured out as I was going through, like, how to start prompting it a little bit better. And then I fed it some plot points that I was thinking of. Max has a crush on Tess, and so he feels like Max, he feels like him and Alex are in some sort of like standoff over Tess, and Alex is just like, that's not a thing that's happening.
There's no triangle here. It's a two-sided
but
triangle.
Like Morgan's over here with Max, like, I saw them talking together, and like, do you think they're a thing? And you know.
Yeah.
So the group gets separated at some point. Max ending up with Morgan, where she can just kind of sit there, whisper into his ear the whole time, feeding his ambition, and Alex ends up with Tess. And just Tess has some crucial information that they'll need when they get to the final door, the final key. Like, she's the one who knows how to do it, and so Morgan figures that out, and then figures out she has to get Tess. She has to kidnap Tess and make sure that Tess makes it all the way to the end with her if she's actually going to get the treasure.
Right.
So that's where her plan forms. Is like, okay, point the boys at each other in competition, and then us girls are going to go get the treasure. See ya. Yeah.
And she, at some point, you're going to have to show how she can control Tess. Like,
right. Yeah. Figure that out. What is motivating Tess in all of this that Morgan can use against her.
Right.
So just kind of spit those plot points back out at me with some
extra words.
Yeah. I was like, cool, let's start working on the plot, but I got a little ahead of myself. It does know what Save the Cat story beats are, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
So those are the Save the Cat story beats. And it tried to kind of jury-rig the story into it, and I was like, nah, bruh.
No.
That pacing's kind of all off. I think it's fine, it's just not what I was already seeing in my head.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, hang on. We gotta get to the setting first before we go through the plot. Like, is this a jungle? Because that was the original prompt, but should we come up with something more creative?
Right.
Different ideas. And so I asked him for ideas for a treasure hunt location. I get the most cliched ideas that exist.
Ancient temple, haunted castle,
desert
snowy mountain range is interesting.
That would be interesting, but not something we could make.
No. Space adventure.
Yeah, so I said I'm looking for something original that I haven't seen before. Let's go back to what are some settings that have to do with metaphorical transformation. And this is where we get to the labyrinth maze idea, where I kind of ended up as the setting. Sure. It gave me a whole bunch of ideas having to do with inner reflection, inner transformation, inner light, inner treasure, sort of stuff. And I was like, okay, this is a different direction. This is a different genre than we were going before.
Yeah.
So I kind of mixed Dreamscape Realm with Time-Bending Labyrinth. I thought about the time... I think I asked it. Nope, I just thought about it. I thought about the time-bending thing for a little bit, and I was like, it doesn't really have to do with transformation. Like, time-bending, time cycles, time loops have more to do with the idea of... cycles and systems and ways that we are trapped by our own, which is part of story, but it's not really. A treasure story has a goal that, if you imagine the story, it goes like in a straight line to the center. And time travel movies have more of a circular,
like a spiral.
Or a spiral, or a figure eight sort of, like.
Right.
If you think about the trajectory, I was like, this just didn't work for me involving time. So I started just trying to give it random things. I was like, this is really going off genre. Do we want to do that?
Yeah.
And in John Truby's book, he talks about how your setting, your locations are like supposed to be a physical manifestation of the slavery and freedom that your character's journey will take them through. So if you're enslaved by failure, what would that look like manifested physically in location or society or...
Interesting.
And so I was like, okay, well, let's just roll with that. What is a setting where everyone is motivated by fear of failure look like? A society that is afraid of failure. And so it just gave me a bunch of what that would look like, which is horrible.
Yeah, I'm starting to think about like a very everyone is rewarded for everything sort of society. You know, a lot of participation awards.
It didn't even give me that.
Oh, okay. I mean, I guess it has perfectionism, yeah.
Hidden vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
That's kind of that idea. That's a cool idea. But I saw in this, okay, what if we, instead of making transformation adventure the theme, well, like, what if we made fear of failure kind of the theme? And all the characters are different takes on the fear of failure. And so highly competitive could be Max. Risk aversion decision making could be Alex. Hidden vulnerabilities could be
Tess?
Morgan.
Morgan.
Or I was like, okay, these could actually be characters. So I said, what if they're all a family? And it's about family culture and generational trauma culture sort of stuff.
Oh, sure.
So our 4 characters are cousins, and they discover a quest to hidden treasure that their grandfather, I said great-grandfather here, but I changed it to grandfather later, had masterminded. It's kind of like the same plot idea as Ready Player One.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was like, okay, there's this older guy, he builds this quest because he wants his grandchildren to learn something. And so it just gave me a bunch of plot points about what that might look like. And I didn't love all of them, but you could see, like, the bones kind of there. I was like, okay, got to get all the characters figured out here, reconfigured to get them. So I kind of went down some rabbit trails with that. What are some settings that are metaphorically connected to the idea of legacy or purpose or inheritance? If we're talking about, like, this generational idea, like, just kind of exploring some different... I didn't really like any of those, so I went back to this infinite puzzle realm, alternate reality maze thing. Right. And so it kind of gave me a bunch of different ideas on that. And made them into some plot points that these characters could kind of hit through. I was like, okay, just give me some plot points, okay? Just give me some things having to do with this.
Yeah, a lot of that, like, it seems like what you're doing is, you kind of ran into a wall a little bit, or, like, you didn't know what direction you want to go, and so you just, like, start making branches. Just, like, generate branches!
Make them!
And I'll follow one of them, or 2.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I was like, what if we went really metaphorical with this? But it's an adventure story, so we need some action. So I said, what about in this maze world, all of the inner monsters of the characters run rampant? And that's what the world is. If fear of failure was able to run rampant in the world. And so we were talking about the different locations that they might go in the maze. Yeah. Some of them are completely dominated by these fear of failure, and some of them are beautiful and perfect, but it's like this toxic perfection that I don't know. That's what I mean. That makes sense. It turns into a mini-series where it's like they can kind of visit a few different locations and defeat a few different monsters.
There's 4 episodes, each about the characters, or 6 episodes, an introduction, one about each character, and then the ending, and then the last episode or something.
Yeah, something. So the world is their whole family. It's not, the kids are the ones going on the adventure, but they meet their parents' monsters too, and their grandfather's monster. And it's kind of at that point, and there's riddles that, like, tell them how to defeat them, that reveal, character things about themselves and insecurity, and so
that's cool.
They realize when they are confronted with, oh, that's what these are. These are these monsters, these things that we confront every day in our relationships, and figuring out how to overcome them. But then they realize, okay, that was just the parents. Where's us? And so we're going deeper and deeper into the characters.
So they don't start with themselves. They start with
and maybe you grandpa? Should start with one of them. You start with the big bad, right? And you're, like, completely devastated.
And then you come back. You have to revisit with all your...
come back to at the end.
Yeah, that's an idea.
So anyway, they get closer to the treasure. They have to confront their own monsters. And you kind of see their negative character traits get stronger and stronger as they get closer to their monsters. And that's what they have to end up overcoming. So Alex's monster hurts and captures the other 3 cousins. He has this talk with his grandfather character, I don't know if it's Max's idea of his grandfather. You know, I was like, I don't care about the plot. Let's
Yeah.
just, housing wise, this is what needs to happen. Where Alex is like, why? This isn't my fault. Why do I have to overcome these? Why am I the one that the burden is placed on to go on this adventure and defeat them? Because these are not my fault. They weren't things that I got hurt by my parents, but my parents got hurt by you that formed these traits. Like,
right.
Why am I the one who has to sacrifice and solve and battle for your mistakes? I was like, oh, this could be a great scene.
Yeah, he's the differing responsibility part of it. I see Ryan just jumped on.
Oh, hi, Ryan.
Have it feed it an entire script.
And then, yeah, like Shakespeare, for instance.
Write it like Shakespeare.
That could be fun.
Yeah, I know you said you did feed it a whole script and you didn't. It kind of was just like, yeah, you could fix these grammar mistakes.
Well, I asked it. That's what I asked it to do.
Yeah. Rewrite the whole thing, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this deferment of responsibility and the refusal of the adventure, even at this point. But he's confronted with his monster is wrecking the world and putting his cousins in danger. And
yeah.
So his grandfather is just like, I'm so sorry that I left this for you, this mess for you to clean up, but you have to do it. You have to save the family, sort of thing. Anyway, it like that. Wow, that's a powerful and emotionally charged storyline. So it plotted out the arc and some of the scenes that I mentioned. That's what it kind of started just doing, is re-saying everything that I say, but adding a little bit more.
Yeah.
With a summary at the end of why it matters and where it's going. So, theme into character web, into structure, into genre and plot elements.
Okay.
And obviously, if I was actually developing this, I would go way deeper into actually figuring out the plot.
Right, like you've kind of skimmed over all of those to get,
yeah,
like you're already too far into the process.
Right, well, I wanted to be able to kind of go over it within the video.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's really knuckle down and figure out some plot things. I'm thinking there needs to be a second four-corner opposition. Family versus the individual will be the values, and then you can place, like, Max and the other kids on the individuals. That's the positive and negative of individuality. And then the grandfather and all the other parents as positive and negative of the family. So that has to do with the relationships, the family dynamic, but then there's also this four-corner opposition with just the four cousins. That systemizes their interactions, I guess I would say. Anyway, so it wrote that out for me, and it keeps putting all the plot back in here. Okay, how would this run out in the plot? How would this come out in the plot? And so then I asked it to do it with the 15 plot beats from Save the Cat.
Right.
A different way of plotting it out. And I was like, okay, the catalyst, what is going to set off this adventure? Why? How do they get to a realm? How do, you know?
Yeah.
And so just seeing it laid out helped me analyze where the holes still really are in the plot. Oh, and I said I think there's 3 plot lines: Alex confronting his fear of failure, the relationships between the cousins, and the tension and legacy of the different generations. And so Save the Cat kind of runs with multiple plot lines. It's kind of designed to
at least an A and B.
At least an A and B, yeah.
Yeah, if not more.
Anyway, so it kind of wrote those out for me and said, oh, see, these are some of the beats. Actually, it used the 7 key structure beats from John Truby to lay these out, which I thought was interesting. And then I just kind of had some corrections, and I kept adding and moving some of the beats around. I think probably at this point would be where I would do what you did, where you copy paste out and then write my own and move it all around and then feed it back in. But I was still curious about, could I get it to do what I was trying to do with the prompting?
Even more. Yeah.
Oh, and I just, this was so frustrating to me that it would always end with
and now
a summary and explanation of why this is so great. What did Ryan say?
Ryan's asking if you're still doing writing live streams in the mornings.
I haven't for a while. I'm still trying to figure out what to do about that. Because I kind of ran out of things to write.
Oh, yeah.
For a while. Because, like, the feature, I finished the treatment, and so now it's kind of out for review. If the review is good and we get it all set up, then I need to write the script. And so I might go back to early morning live streams. I just don't have yet enough information to make decisions about.
Yeah. And you can't just start going off without without the review.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, you could write this.
I know, I could. Anyway, so I kept moving things around, trying to get it to see if I could get it to kind of output what I was looking for. I think that's just the wrong strategy entirely. You should go until you can see it and then write it like you were doing and then feed it back in and see what it comes up with.
Because when you're doing that, you're like curating it into your idea, whereas this, it's still kind of coming up with new ideas that are outside your box already.
Yeah, specifically the pacing just wasn't what I was looking at. I kept putting plot beats that we talked about, but then like it was way later, and so all the rest of the plot had to be squished into. So I eventually gave it my breakdown, like 4-act structure, what each act would kind of focus on, so that I could get the overall pacing more like what I was looking at.
Yeah.
And if I was, again, developing this fully, I would continue to go and go and go until I had the plot completely outlined.
Right.
But I wanted to get through all of my things, so I said, okay, now we're going to go into the characters, which is the last step. We get a theme, character web, structure, genre and plot, and then characters development.
Yeah.
So let's do, we need a multi-generational look at the fear of failure. Let's make Tess and Max siblings. Max is an only child. Morgan is an only child. So we need at least 3 of their parents to be siblings. And let's make it a grandfather instead of great-grandfather. So I kind of gave it what I was thinking for the family.
Yeah.
Outlined that. Put in some plot elements we'd already talked about. So I said, okay, we need to, if we're going to develop the kids, we have to develop the parents, because it's supposed to be about how the parents have influenced the kids, the culture.
Like a generational, demons is what you were going, or monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3 things, there's 3 siblings. What are 3 different ways to react to living with high pressure and the fear of failure? And I see the connections to Encanto at this point. I was like, 3 siblings, and they all have kids, and it's about generational trauma, and I was like,
oh, this has already been done.
This has already been done, hasn't it? Well, not about this. So
not as a treasure movie.
So it gave me 3. I was like, okay, cool. So we already kind of have the characterizations of the cousins. Now we gotta match the parents with the cousin, like what kind of parenting would cause that to be in the cousins. And now I have options. So I assigned each one of these traits, the embrace and excel under pressure, resentment and rebellion, and avoidance and self-doubt, to each of the parents, and decided which kids belong to which parents. So that made sense with how I wanted the kids to turn out.
Yeah.
So I fed it that. I was like, oh, cool. And I gave them a little bit of history of maybe why they're like that.
So it just kind of expounded on that a bit more? Is that what its response is?
Yeah. So I kind of lost that transformation idea, and so I was like, okay, we got to go back to Morgan. Like, who is this character at this point? What is the forefront opposition we're working off of now?
Yeah, since she was kind of born out of that in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
So her father is the resentment and rebellious one, and so I imagine he's like the firstborn son, and in this high pressure to succeed family, you know, all of the hopes and dreams are placed on the firstborn, and he just like the opposite direction. And he's a musician who kind of doesn't make a ton of money, and he had a daughter randomly with this one hookup one night, and you know, it's like his life is the complete opposite of anything his father would have been. A mess.
Yeah.
And how Morgan is affected is that her dad is just like, oh, just be whoever you want to be, and there's just no boundaries to her life at all, and so she feels like she doesn't do you be who you want to be when you don't know who you are?
Okay.
That was her. So it's kind of like, I didn't think through how that would play out in the plot all the way yet.
Uh-huh.
So I was, at this point, just playing around with ideas.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it wrote a bunch of stuff about that. I was like, okay, let's go to our protagonist. Let's really build out the protagonist. Give me 5 backstories on why Alex is so scared of failure. And this was really vague in general. I was like, not what I was going for. I think I do need to ask for a prompt that's like, specific, like give me some detailed scenes with like emotional stakes that could explain why. And that's kind of where I went.
Like almost like make a story about his backstory that we aren't even gonna see, but
but that
there.
I want to know and I want to envision.
And like
again, I'm trying to get it to do the processing for me. I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But will it do it for me and come up with 5 versions that I can pick the best one?
Right. I'm thinking of. Did you watch Moon Knight?
I don't think I ever did.
The show. They did that like
Moon Knight.
With Oscar Isaac. He's a Egyptian superhero.
Yeah, I was thinking of Moonlight.
Yeah,
that movie that lost but
that Oscar
won over
La La Land. Yeah, that weird
debacle.
Oscar fiasco. Moon Knight.
Moon Knight.
The Marvel superhero.
Right, Marvel superhero.
Yeah. They did an interesting thing because the whole thing was about like his inner demons and why he has multiple personality disorder, and so like the second to last episode shows why. So that's the scene I'm thinking you're writing is like, why do I like think this way? Kind of. Anyway.
That's what I was looking for.
Right.
But what they had to say did prompt me that Alex is really resentful against his mom because he feels like there's all these double standards where she stands for all this perfection and she has all this success, but only in her career and in the outside part of her life. She divorced, she is losing her son, and like the relational part is a mess, and Alex sees that and is frustrated that he's held to this vision of perfection that she has of herself and of this life, and he's like, but it's awful.
Yeah, but it's not true.
It's not true that it's perfect. It's awful. It's awful to be your son. I don't want to. Thank you.
But he also doesn't want to stand up for himself, or
right. It's just kind of turned into this apathy that I
Yeah.
don't care. If I care, I'm gonna get hurt.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of. See, this is what I mean by it's like I started in a place. I'm in a different place now, and if I was trying to stay on track, this would be frustrating.
Yeah.
But it's still just exploring things. And again, this is within like 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
you
don't
said
expect
5 hours, so it's only like a couple hours each.
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah. And so I don't really expect a story to be coherent and all the way put together at the end of 5 hours. But this is a lot of development to put together to be like, okay, here's your options, here's what the story can be. I got one of the names wrong and that really confused it for a second, so I had to get it back on track. I ended up just reposting what I said before but changing one of the names. So here I was looking for like character tone, character voice. I was like, what are some things that he might say that express this resentment? Again, the most obvious. I was like, okay.
Yeah, get all the 10 worst ideas out of the way.
Yeah,
looks like
this is not quite what I was looking for. And then what I said, I asked it to write a scene that was far more detailed. And I said from when Alex was 8 and his mom was disapproving, I want to focus on how an 8-year-old feels in that kind of situation. So I'm delving into the motivation, delving into the backstory. Why? What are the key memories that defined Max as a character? And so it did, and it was. I got frustrated with this at some point. It was hilarious because they'd start out all mad at each other, and then it would get resolved by the end.
Right.
His mom was like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have talked to you that way. And Alex is like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have talked to you that way. We'll work on communicating better. And then they were happy. And I had to write these scenes, like 4 or 5 different scenes, and every single time it resolved it. Why?
No, this is a backstory. It's meant to make the character angry.
So I was really trying to tug on the heartstrings, and I asked it to write a letter in the style of a 10-year-old where Alex is asking his dad why mom is always so mad and can I come live with you? And I was just like, tug on my heartstrings, please.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and it was okay, but it was too insightful. I was like, I want to leave, Dad. Mom is so angry at me, and I feel like it's not fair. You know, I was like, our 10-year-olds are really this introspective.
Yeah.
So I said, can you write a version where Alex doesn't know what he needs? He's just trying to reach out because he needs something.
Yeah.
But then he just have Alex write, I don't know what I need, but I need something.
Yeah, there goes taking your exact verbiage.
I was like, not exactly. But this started a thing where I could use probably about 60% of this if I wanted to, and just kind of fix up the other stuff. And so here we're starting to get into the create part of the big picture process. So there's spark, development, and then create, where I'm like, I just need it a thing. Can we just create it for me and I'll edit it? I wanted to know what it would do if I just
said, wow, that's sad.
And it's like, I'm sorry that the letter felt sad.
And you're like, no, that's perfect.
So something I've been looking at doing is building characters out from the Enneagram personalities test sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. If anybody wants to go down that rabbit hole, it's a lot of fun. So I asked it, is it familiar with the Enneagram personalities? And it is. And so it gave me all of them, which was very helpful because I don't have all of this memorized. It's a lot of information. So I was just looking at it going, oh, that's that character. Oh, that's that character. Oh, that's that character. And so I did ask it, which ones do you think would fit the characters based on what we've already talked about?
Okay.
And so it gave me some. And I liked all of them except for Alex. I didn't feel like that was complex enough. It wasn't quite on point.
Well, that's cool that it got like 3/4.
Yeah, I was like, oh, actually, you're right. I need to do more research on this because a couple of these I was like, I don't really know that much about this one in particular because I've only researched the personalities for characters that I've already done. I haven't really done the full. There's
a lot of Enneagram.
It's a rabbit hole. So I said I'm not sure about Alex, and I suggested a different personality type. I said, okay, yeah, you could do that, and I didn't feel like it totally understood, but it was starting to get there. So I wanted to see how far understood Enneagram, because there's like the personalities, and then there's like wings on either side of the personalities, how they connect to the personalities on either side of them, and then there's also diagrams on how they connect to the ones across from them, and like so I was like, do you understand all that? I asked it, what are type 1's wings and stress and growth lines? And it did.
Cool.
And it handed me all of that for type 1. I was like, so again, I could have went and researched this and found it, but it didn't break my stream of thought because it was right here.
Yeah, you just needed that information, and there it was, and it was sort of
applicable.
Yeah.
He didn't really apply it because I was just asking.
Yeah.
So I think, using that, I kind of figured out what I want. I think Alex should be a type 1 wing 9 who is stressed and so exhibit type 4 traits. And so I was like, oh, that's a great character choice because we got to do the positive reinforcement. But it just kind of expressed it and went into more detail about what that might look like.
Yeah.
And so the final thing that I wanted to do, kind of with this, was, can you take everything that we've talked about and write out a treatment? And it did.
Wow.
It's all right there. So I could take that treatment and continue to flesh it out and just copy paste. So it's pretty much all the scenes we've talked about at this point. And a lot of ones that I didn't correct, where I was like, okay, there's a scene that like this that needs to happen. This isn't quite it, but...
Right, and it fleshed it out, and you're like, well, that's not it. But it's something.
So I was curious about the create function. How far can we go with this idea of just generate scenes for me? So I started giving it scenes that we'd already talked about.
Yeah.
They're hilarious. They're not
Oh,
good.
boy.
Can you write the scene where Alex talks to his grandfather?
Do we need to act this one out?
Were you Alex or your grandfather?
I don't know. Do we need to decide?
You're not real. You're just a manifestation of my mind, like everything else in this crazy place.
Maybe, but sometimes things we create in our minds carry great truths. Don't dismiss what you're feeling, Alex.
Alex hesitates, unsure whether to engage with the apparition, but a deep longing to express himself takes over. Why did you leave us with this legacy of fear? Mom always wanted me to be perfect, to succeed. She's never happy with me.
I'm sorry, Alex. I thought we were helping you all to strive for greatness, but now I see that has caused a lot of pain and suffering.
Pushed us to be successful, but what if we fail? What if I fail?
Failure is part of life, Alex. It's how you learn and grow. You can't be afraid of it.
But Mom, she makes me feel like a disappointment. I can never be what she wants.
You don't have to be what you want, Alex. You're your own person with your own dreams and aspirations. Embrace who you are, and you don't need to fear. Don't let fear hold you back.
But how do I do that? How do I stop being afraid of failing?
By acknowledging, by acknowledging that it's okay to make mistakes. No one is perfect, not even me. You have to accept yourself, flaws and all. And that's the key to unlocking your potential.
I just want to be me without feeling like I have to prove myself to anyone.
You don't have to prove anything, Alex. You're already enough. Believe in yourself. Oh yeah, you gotta have the believe in yourself line. And the rest will follow.
Thank you, Grandpa. I needed to hear that.
Now always remember, boy, the treasure you seek is not just at the end of the maze, it's within you. Find it and you'll find your true legacy. Fade out. Yeah, end scene.
End scene. Oh, I was like,
thanks.
Yes, but no. There's no subtext.
Yeah, no subtext.
None. So that's kind of what I meant by like, okay, you can look at your scene and analyze where is the moment that it needs to hinge on. Like what is the scene structure? What is and because it gave us some, and so okay, so first we're gonna talk about our feelings, and then we're gonna talk about our problem, and then there's the solution, and then the resolution. You know, it's like okay.
Yeah, there is a structure.
You can pull. I would totally rewrite that.
Right.
But you can pull stuff out. So I said, can you write the letter? So I come up with the idea that Alex finds this letter that kind of kicks off the maze from the grandfather, and so can you write the letter? It's cryptic and it contains a riddle. My beloved descendants, if you are reading this letter, it means you have embarked on the treasure hunt that I've carefully crafted for you. This maze holds just not the promise of material wealth, but the opportunity for personal transformation and discovery.
Wow, stating the theme. Okay.
The rules of the maze are simple but cryptic, as life itself often is. Trust the path unseen, face your shadows, seek the key of self-acceptance, and embrace the power of togetherness.
Together.
Now for the riddle that holds the key to the heart of the maze. In shadows cast within light, the past entwines the present's might. To find the way you must abide by harmony's song where souls collide.
That's the thing ChatGPT is good at, is coming up with rhymes and poetry, kind of.
Anyway, so I was like, oh, okay. So if I was writing and I needed to come up with like all these riddles that are part of the I was like,
there, yeah, easy.
Make me a bunch of riddles and give me their answers, please, because I didn't know what that would mean.
Yeah.
So it just gave me a bunch of riddles, and I think, yeah. So I was like, okay, these were really random. Can you make some riddles that point to family, trust, faith, keys, responsibility, and knowledge? Like some things that they might be talking about and discovering as they go through the maze. And so some of these were pretty fun. As someone who's not good at riddles at all, coming up with them, I was like, oh, is this
wow.
In intricate patterns I am designed, a gateway to secrets you'll find, unlocking doors both wide and small. In your hands I hold the call. What am I?
Interesting. I wonder if it's pulling these riddles, because I did a similar thing to this. I asked it to just list out a whole bunch of like short jokes, and so a lot of them I had heard before, and so. Like, I wonder if these are other people's riddles, not necessarily ChatGPT's riddles.
I was curious, but it said they're original riddles.
Okay.
I was, I feel, I'm like, I don't
know about that, but yeah.
So I was just kind of keep going, like seeing if I could get it to do some scenes.
Yeah.
And I kind of, this was so vague, it didn't even connect it to the story
Oh.
that we'd already told.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do a different one. And again, it resolved. Like, they're so frustrated and then like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, and his mom gives him like a pep talk. Oh, this was a fun one. Can you write an argument between the 3 second-generation siblings about whose kids are the biggest failures? This was pretty fun. But again, it resolved at the end. They were like, we really shouldn't yell at each other. Everyone's kids are perfect just the way they are. And I was like, what is happening? So I asked it, why do you always end the scenes with positive realizations?
As an AI language model, it likes to start a lot of things with that.
Yeah. My goal is to provide helpful and constructive responses to the queries I receive. Ending scenes with positive realizations or resolutions is a way to promote healthy and optimistic storytelling. I mean, I guess.
Well, but that's the thing, is it's doing a whole story structure kind of in one scene and not using, it isn't understanding that it's just a piece of your overall puzzle.
So I said I like positive realizations too, but not at the end of every scene. You don't want your scenes to resolve the conflict because you lose the tension for the larger story. I wanted to know if it could grasp what I was saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, it said, it gave me a big thing about, oh yeah, you're right, sometimes they shouldn't, and thank you, yes. And at the end, it also kept doing this, and it rubbed me the wrong way. As you continue to develop your story, consider the pacing and sequence of its scenes carefully. Utilize positive realizations strategically to provide emotional depth and character development while also incorporating scenes that add layers of complexity and tension to maintain the story's momentum.
Nice.
So I asked it to please refrain from offering advice about the writing process, because it kept doing that at the end too. It'd be like, so as you continue to develop this story, keep in mind these things about the characters, and you need to think about. I was like, that might be nice for someone who's like just kind of breaking into the story world and wants to understand a little bit more complexity of story. But for me, it's just like,
I need that.
So I asked it not to do that. And then I need ideas for locations. Give me some descriptions of these locations. I'm not seeing them at all. And that's kind of where I left off. But
okay.
If I were to develop the story, you can see how I would stay on kind of the stages until it was all figured out. I wouldn't move on to the character, to the structure, until I had really nailed my character web and my 4-corner opposition. I didn't go into really nailing it and getting it figured
because it was still kind of fluid, and things, I could see things starting to kind of like spread out a little bit, like, no, it's getting away from me, it's not all based on that structure that you were already figuring out. Like, it sort of is, but you were the one kind of holding it together, not ChatGPT.
I think if I was doing it I'd do what you would do, where I would copy paste out anything that I liked, and rearrange it and add to it, and then feed it back in to chat to keep us a little bit more on the mark, because where we ended was very different from where we started. But
it's true.
Just so much of the processing is condensed, and I can just kind of go, oh, that's an idea, let's run with that, let's just so
I guess a question then is for serious story, do you see yourself using ChatGPT? Like this was a test to see what it would do, but I don't know, can you see using it through the whole process? You went through a whole process here, but like you were saying, you went solidifying the opposition, and or at some point would you just ditch it because it would be too frustrating?
I think we have to think about it more integratively with the entire writing process, so not really project by project. If you're thinking about your entire writing process, and this is kind of based off of a very interesting video I saw by Jordan Peterson. I can't go an episode without talking about Jordan Peterson. He did an interview with an AI developer.
Oh, okay.
And what they were talking about was very interesting. It has somewhat to do with what you were talking about, but what Jordan has done, or is trying to do,
Right.
is create, and I don't know if he's using ChatGPT or he has it, because like his family develops.
Right. Yeah.
Software
Well, he might be
and
using the GPT
right.
base, not ChatGPT, because that's kind of like a skin on top of GPT.
He is feeding it his books, his writings, transcripts of all of his, talks and speeches.
Yeah.
And he said it's over.
Oh yeah, that's right. I think I heard this.
Over 1 million words or something like that.
Yeah, he said he's kind of trying to like make himself
right,
like a duplicate of
and
himself.
so if long term you're thinking about that as a writer, that's what I would do. Is as I think things and I am researching things and philosophy and history and things that I want to write about but incorporate in story, I would feed that into ChatGPT. And so it wouldn't be within one. It would be like, okay, now I'm going over to my like my greater philosophy ChatGPT, and I'm going to talk to it about the theme that I'm trying to talk. And so it's relating with everything that I've ever thought about that sort of thing.
So it's more like you would make dedicated tools out of ChatGPT rather than just conversing with it about one particular story and starting afresh each time. You'd like, okay, this is my philosophy tool. Okay, this is my it can always do random idea tool by just starting a new thread and
Right. I think that random generation sort of stuff is really helpful when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I just want to make something. Like, help me come up with story ideas. But long term, that's not really, I don't want to just make random things. And it's not really random because I did bring in the themes that matter to me and I am shaping the story. But it's still like, I don't feel like the core is generated by me. And, I have 8 or 9 stories that I've been processing and thinking about for years.
Right.
And so it's like those stories, how would I start to develop those stories when I'd have to somehow input them, but they're not solidified enough to do that.
Right. They're in your head.
Right.
You can't just feed it a script.
I could write what I have though and feed it to ChatGPT to fix the holes, and so it's like I need like my deep thinking. And like you said, each of the characters gets their own chat thread where you can develop the characters and then start talking them and simulate them talking to each other.
Right.
And then also build just like this random generation one where you're like, okay, out of context of everything, let's generate some ideas because I need them. And so it's like you could actually build out kind of this matrix of tools for you.
Interesting. Yeah. That's cool. I can see that.
That's a lot of work.
I know. I mean, now I'm thinking about, like, what are the... Ethical isn't the right word, but I'm going there again. But I was like, what does that mean to, like... For each of us to have our own... like, if each person developed an AI that was them, like a duplicate. I don't know. Now I want to make a story about that. More like a Black Mirror episode.
You should listen to this episode because that's
I feel like
what
I
this
did,
guy is
'cause I
trying
heard him
to do.
say
he's
something.
He thinks that yes, it is a big problem, ChatGPT being open source and being a accumulation of everything.
Right.
And that information problem where. So his solution is to localize it. That you should have your own ChatGPT or your own AI
model
that's made up of everything that you know and everything that you've experienced and everything you've thought. So it's kind of like this data cache.
It's like a brain augmentation.
Yeah, of you.
Yeah, interesting.
I know. That it's not accessible to the web.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Anywho, that's kind of all I had to work with. Just kind of going through it, and I think that knowing your process, you can figure out how to kind of add to your process.
Right.
How to augment your process if you actually know your process.
Yeah, I think I liked going through mine and yours because it was kind of like I don't feel like I understand my process at all. Besides, I see things, and so I lean towards the more visual AIs. But even then, it's just kind of like I could just make an image of something, and I don't really go any deeper than that. And so yeah, whereas you understanding like, oh, I want it in this story structure, and you were picking out elements that were connected to each other and telling it how to connect things. That was I don't know, that was really cool.
I feel like yours is more free. I got really frustrated with mine because I was like, it's not following the structure.
Well, I was frustrated with mine because at a certain point it kept I think it was the same problem. It kept resolving it. Like I was like, okay, why would he be hiding his secret, and why would there be all this stuff, and how could we say that through in a subtle way, and all these things, and it would always just and always go with what I had written and then write like 2 paragraphs that were like, and he saw the error of his ways, and they held hands and danced into the sunset. And I was just kind of like, no,
stop!
I don't want it to resolve so quickly, or like I want one of the characters to die, and it doesn't resolve, and it because it's a short film, it ends on like it makes you want more, and so yeah.
The more you invite it into what you're actually trying to do, it seems better. That's what I learned like way earlier. Correct it when there's repeated behaviors that you don't appreciate.
Yeah.
Or repeated frustrations. Correct it way earlier.
Yeah, we didn't really go into that, but did you feel like you noticed it let off on all of that?
I didn't really keep writing. That was this afternoon.
Right.
But I was writing that, so I kind of ran out of time.
Yeah, because that would be something curious to know if it actually does stop doing that, at least in that thread. Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I'd be curious.
I'm wondering if at some point you need to make like a starter prompt document that just like is like what you post
at the beginning
of each of your tools. Yeah. Like it's like this tool you start with this, and like don't say this, don't do that. It has like this do's and don'ts, like 10 commandments sort of list, and then you're like,
here's the rules of how this is gonna go.
Yeah,
okay.
I want to write a story, and you need to follow my rules. Yeah. After you figure out but that would be something for you to figure out, which is tough. Yeah.
I think it would just take trial and error, really.
Yeah.
And it might never be finished. It'd probably just get tweaked every time you use it.
Yeah.
Another use that I'm seeing for ChatGPT is also as a kind of like an on-ramp to writing. Like instead of just hopping into a scene,
oh yeah.
Yeah, you just kind of chat with ChatGPT for a minute about, okay, I'm writing this scene about this thing. Where do you think it should go, and what are the problems that you see? And so you could kind of come into the scene with your goals already in mind of what you're trying to do with the scene.
It's like have it barf a draft, sort of.
Maybe, yeah.
Before you do.
Yeah, so that you can kind of be like,
that's not working and here's all the reasons why. And then you write your own because you actually understand the scene now.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the thing I've been doing. Another thing Jordan Peterson said was kind of like learning how to write. Because for me, since I'm not a writer, like learning how to talk and how to express ideas almost requires someone else to listen and to, for you to talk and for someone else to listen and like provide feedback on what you're saying. So I've been using ChatGPT in that way too, where I'm just like this is an idea I've had, and it writes. I tell it to write the same idea basically back to me. It just repeats it, but with different words, and I kind of go, oh, well, you're not understanding what I'm saying, so I have to like correct it. But in that process, I'm learning what general people would misunderstand about what I'm saying. Kinda.
I see, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing we didn't get to is the refine portion. We talked a little bit about it.
Oh, yeah.
I did feed it my whole Sins of the Father script and ask it to kind of analyze it and...
Yeah.
I mean,
Polish.
ChatGPT likes all my scripts, so I haven't really got any major like structure notes, it usually says, "Wow, these conflicts are great, and the structure seems fine, and these characters are satisfying." And I was like,
Thanks.
Glad to know. But I haven't fed it a draft of anything. Like, I've only fed it like mostly finished, mostly developed things. So that's not exactly fair. But the other thing that I think it could really be useful for is on like more of the business publishing end of things, where it's like, give me 5 versions of a book blurb. Give me, I did that with Sin of the Father. I said, what are 15 versions of a logline? So that, because I've had a hard time coming up with a logline for that. Or titles, like.
Titles, log lines.
Character names, location names. All of the details of your story you can talk to ChatGPT about. I also fed it a whole treatment. It's like it's a 20-page treatment. I don't actually know how many words it is. And then I asked it to condense it down to like 2,000 words. And so it created a whole summary of the story, and I was like, oh, well, that's really handy. That's really nice.
Yeah.
So it's just things like that's easy processing.
Right, like if you were to do that yourself, you'd have to sit there and kind of like, I'd have to, how am I squashing this? And you have to read the whole thing. And so kind of what you're saying is like, that's processing that you're like, okay delegating, sort of.
Yeah. I'm very okay delegating that.
Yeah.
All my least favorite parts.
What was I thinking? Oh yeah, as an experiment, I asked ChatGPT to teach me Klingon. And because it knows, it does know Klingon, which is interesting.
What a nerdy thing.
It is nerdy. I didn't get very far in that, but like, I don't know, for some reason I was thinking about, like, character, making like specific character threads. You could almost make like a language thread and start developing your own like alien language for your story and stuff like that. Is possible, I guess I would say. And you could start speaking to it in your language and it would start speaking back. Instead of having to have like a partner that understands and.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know.
Possibilities are endless.
They are.
Well, I think we should probably wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts? I feel like that's what we've been doing for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. I don't really have any last thoughts other than I'm still not a writer. I'm going to use ChatGPT to be, for myself, just kind of editing stuff, but I did really like watching your process, and I could see how if I understood more, like, you were just asking it about John, I forgot his name.
John Truby.
Yeah, Truby, and the Save the Cat, which I've heard vague things about, and even the Enneagram stuff. Like, I feel like both you, since ChatGPT already knows it, you also have to kind of know it, but like you don't have to know it as much because you can kind of rely on its knowledge. But you can't. But for me, who knows nothing, I couldn't like say list this out and then I wouldn't be able to use it because I'd be like, I don't know how to apply any of that to my stuff. So I think as far as like it taking over the creative, like it's not going to take over creativity, because in both our scenarios we kind of had to rein it in, and we were being creative on the side while it was just kind of generating a lot of or like you were saying, processing a lot of things and bringing in a lot of general stuff. So I feel like as a tool that way, this has helped me see some other ways I could use it.
I'm curious what uses it might have as an editor, a film editor.
Yeah.
I know there's film editing AI sort of stuff, and it's not for creative editing.
No.
It's for
like podcast editing.
Like cut out all the pauses and ums. Like
right.
It can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
To a pretty close degree of accuracy. But if you wrote down all of the major story beats, now that you have the edit, which might be different from the script, and then you wrote and then took it to ChatGPT, and like you'd have to find some way of transferring the footage to text to have a conversation.
Right.
About
well, that's a question for a developer, I think. But like, do you think in the meantime we could do like just write out the beats and the theme and have it kind of like reconstruct our story and then and then you just have to take each of those elements and kind of make the footage say that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense with how I understand editing. Like, usually I'm looking at an edit, and I'm looking at, it's not about the story beats. Like, there's that underlying structure, but it's about the images.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This image is not communicating, or this series of images is not communicating what I'm trying to communicate. How do we fix that problem?
Right.
Or it's communicating something besides what I'm trying to
Well, I guess that's what ChatGPT would give you is it would give you what you should be communicating at this moment, which you already know, so that wouldn't be helpful.
Right. I don't know if that would.
And I do know Google Bard, which is a ChatGPT-like chatbot, they just introduced, you can send it an image and it'll describe the image. So that is, I feel like that is coming. The ability for it to like see an image and think about images, but at the same time, a series of images and what they mean
in a story.
and all that. I feel like that is going to be difficult. Like you'd have to do kind of what you did, where you'd have to like sort of. I almost see ChatGPT as a new thread as a little baby. You know, you gotta kind of train it up in what you want it to be looking for and constructing, and so it wouldn't be a helpful edit tool to just like plop in at the end. Like you'd have to like be training it as you're editing.
I see.
So that the same idea, so that it ends up being you. Like both you and it are thinking the same thing.
You're able to have conversations with your creativeness.
Yeah. And so
your processor,
so
actually, what it is. You become the creative, and the processing gets delegated.
Yeah. So
That's crazy.
yeah. So if I was to do that, you'd have to like start at the very beginning and like work it alongside your edit, instead of just feeding it your edit and expecting it to understand what you're thinking about.
Do you think it's greater potential for, like, you think of all the processing work of an editor, it would be much better at, like, you know, syncing and clipping and all of all of the prep work that you do for the actual editing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you built a tool that was just where like almost like I could grab a microphone and just talk to it and it would just be doing it, like that's kind of the ultimate, maybe not the ultimate is like I just think it and it happens, stream of consciousness thing, where it's like if I could be watching the screen and just say, okay, like I need you to, or even if typing it I guess is close enough, but I could like give it a list of things, like I need you to batch rename all these clips and sort them into folders based on this script, and just feed it, you know, attach the script, and then say, you know, sync all these audio files to this, and there's already software that can sync audio, so I don't see AI not being able to do that. There's already AI that's starting to be able to like separate out voices, so you could even like just record like garbage audio on set and have it like clean it all up. I'm sure that's not going to be the case, but to a certain extent. But you know, you could, where it's just like, okay, I didn't like have a lav on each of them, I just have a boom mic, but I want you to like separate out all the people into their own tracks, and you know, do all that stuff, and then by the end of that you'd have all that footage. Like it might take an hour of processing or something like that, but that's like days of work that I wouldn't have to do.
Yeah.
And then I just say, you know, and then I just go through and react as a human, because that's kind of like what the selects process is, where you hit space and you're just going to watch and you just react to the footage. And that's the piece I don't think the AI would be able to. Like, it would be able to tell you if something was out of focus and all this stuff, but sometimes it's artistically out of focus. So, you know, it like you wouldn't want it to just go through and delete everything.
Right.
Do a lot of the trimming stuff.
It's like putting assistant editors out of work.
Yeah, it's the assistant editing portion, but I don't fully understand it, but there's more to assistant editing than just that, because it is like it's more like shifting the assistant editor's job from doing all the work to supervising all the work, which they already do.
Right.
It would just like, so it shorten their job for sure, but they would still be like in charge of like, because the assistant editor is in charge of versioning and making sure like everything's up to date, and you know, if are we exporting the final for the theater, and which, you know, like having it all organized and like doing the spreadsheets and stuff. So theoretically an AI could be doing that, but you'd almost want like an overseer as a person, and that would still be the assistant editor, I think. Yeah. Anyway, did you have any final thoughts?
I don't think so. I think I said a lot of the thoughts.
Yeah.
I think it's... most of what has been explored has been short-term usage, and so wrapping my head around long-term usage...
yeah.
Is an interesting idea, and how I think it would be most effective. It's a little scary, like you say, like it's getting to know you, but as data, because it's not actually a thing that knows, you know.
Yeah. And
so it doesn't, but it's data that is supposedly out there somewhere.
Yeah. Well, another way to think about it is the way it was trained is with a neural network, which is how our brains work anyway, is neurons. And so ChatGPT, it could be off by a factor of 10, but it has almost, I think it has like 10 times less neurons than a human brain, something like that. And so, I'm not sure at which development stage or anything like that, so I could be getting my data wrong, but so at a certain point, like if we ever reach a point where an AI model is kind of comparable to a human brain, is that the point at which we all get, you know, we all have smartphones, and so it's like we all have a copy of our brain, like an AI that is trained to think like us, that mirrors our own brain. And so like that's kind of where it seems like we could be going. And what does that mean? I don't know, because that could be very
weird.
Because it would be, I mean, there is a Black Mirror episode on that where they they're cloning your brain and then putting it to work as a assistant, as your personal assistant. And so, you know, think of Google or Alexa, you know, Google Home or Alexa, where it's like as a smart house but it knows you, and so it just does things before you think about it because it's thinking the same thing as you at that moment. And that's kind of the episode, the Black Mirror episode, goes into how horrible that is for the mind that is trapped as the house, you know.
But it's not alive. It's not a...
Right. Well, yeah, so anyway, so that's when you start getting into, like, well, is it, if it thinks just like you, is it you, you know? Anyway, that's a whole theory.
So I think before I delve into creating this, like, long-term processor with me, I'd have to figure out the ethics, because ChatGPT is not secure. It's not personalized. It's not localized.
Right.
And so it would just be all of this stuff. And I don't know if there's a possibility of that turning into actual data for
advertisers.
Yeah, the way that who knows? I don't know.
Right.
Or if it's only you know, there seems to be a great deal of mystery around ChatGPT and exactly how it's making the connections and how it's forming, like you said, that 170,000
dimensional.
170.
I think it's 170,000
dimensional,
or even 170 million. I'm not sure.
Dimensional
space that all the words exist in, with connections to each one.
Right, and so network. I don't know if you could just take ChatGPT's data and make anything out of it, because it has to be looked at through that connectivity matrix thing. I don't know. I have no idea how any of this works. So
me neither.
I'm barely wrapping my head around it. So I don't know. I'd have to think through the ethics of, at this point where it's all open.
And and I think what you're saying is true, where it's like not only the ethics, but like if you were to invest the time to make something like that, you'd want to know that that's the tool you're going to be using for a long time.
Right.
And so is ChatGPT that tool?
Right.
Or is it another AI model? Or should you, download the GPT source code and like write your own, like Jordan Peterson kind of is doing? So, so there isn't. I don't think there isn't a publicly available version of that is secure, like you're saying. And
Right.
so it's like
Right.
the answer is no. You shouldn't like make a carbon copy of yourself at this point in ChatGPT
Yeah.
specifically.
Not a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, Dr. Halsey did that in Halo. I'm not familiar with Halo.
Yeah, I'm not either. But he made like a copy of himself to talk to. I'm guessing is what you're referring to, Ryan.
It's a very interesting idea, psychologically.
Yeah.
All right, but we got to bring this to an end. Thank you to everyone who's hung out with us this evening. This is super fun to kind of delve into this a little bit more and see how this tool can help us. I'm still wrapping my head around it. I think it's going to take a little bit more experimentation to really feel comfortable in it and like it's seamless with my writing process.
Right. Yeah, because right now it feels like, oh, I have to go talk to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then you gotta get out of that space.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the end of the video. I'll be back in a few weeks with another subject. I don't know what I'm really talking about. I kind of just picked this because it sounded interesting. That's usually how I pick what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Some suggested things have been plot twists. Eventually, I don't know if this will be the next one, I want to talk about self-learning. How to teach yourself.
That would be a good one.
I don't know if people are interested, but I have things to say, so... She made a clone of her brain to help make an IA helper. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that who Cortana is in the Halo universe? I think we're both really unfamiliar, but that sounds...
You're far more familiar than I am.
Yeah, that sounds like it. That would be a connection.
But, I don't know. What sounds interesting to talk about? Plot twist is interesting because I don't know how to do it. I've never done a plot twist.
Yeah.
So I'd have to figure it out. Yeah, that's Cortana. Okay, cool. Well, we're going to sign off. Hope you guys have a great few weeks. Keep learning, keep being creative and making things.
Yeah.
And I'll see you soon.
See you guys.